Conquest manual in another world. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 326 The Truth. In the command room. Hearing what Patriarch Wei said, Lin Li's expression suddenly froze, and he asked anxiously, "Oh, what other possibility is there?" Patriarch Wei's eyes showed a trace of hesitation again, and his expression was hesitant to speak. It can be seen that he actually didn't have much confidence in his guess, and he might even think it was outrageous. He pondered for about 10 seconds, and finally made up his mind and said slowly, "Captain Lin, my guess may be a little bizarre, but it does fit the situation you said. That is it possible that Mo Pidong is going through the heart demon tribulation?" Heart demon tribulation. Hearing this word, Lin Li was stunned at first. Then he seemed to have thought of something, and his eyes were about the size of 20 Li Ronghaos. How is this possible? Patriarch Wei smiled bitterly, and said helplessly, "I don't really believe this possibility myself, but this is the only explanation I know that can explain the past." Lin Li's expression suddenly became serious. He did not respond, but his twitching facial muscles and clenched fists showed that the camp's top leader was not calm at the moment. The date was close to the beginning of February, and it had been about 6 months since the rabbits arrived at the Great Mo realm. During this period of time, while the rabbits were practicing, they also did not ignore the collection of various practice intelligence. Some intelligence information is actually far from being used now, and is almost several steps ahead of the current progress. But for rabbits, who are addicted to collecting, it is basic to collect some information in advance. Many times, even if they know that they will get a lot of question marks, the rabbits will run up to cast an identification spell. Therefore, through the collection of many information channels such as the Wei family, Linyuan City, and Ziqiang City, the rabbits basically mastered the intelligence information of all practice checkpoints within the middle stage of the nascent soul realm. The low-level ones include the birth of divine thoughts in the 4th level of key training, the refining of the life instrument in the 7th level of key training, etc. The middle and high-level ones include the multiple compositions of the golden elixir in the Jinden realm, the 5 shapes of the infant fire in the nascent soul realm, etc. There are also some dual cultivation techniques and other things. Among all the cultivation information, there is an extremely special link. It is the heart demon tribulation. It is said that the mind and consciousness of the cultivator who encounters the heart demon tribulation will be attracted to heart demon space, and accept various tests from the evil thoughts in the heart. Once a mistake is made during the tribulation, it is basically the death of the person and the disappearance of the Tao, and the data will be cleared and formatted on the spot. But if the heart demon tribulation is passed, it means that the cultivator has the possibility of condensing the nascent soul. That's right. Condensation. Nascent soul. According to the information the rabbits have, before a cultivator breaks through to the nascent soul realm, he must go through 5 extremely important small tribulations. The heart demon tribulation is one of them. It doesn't matter what the remaining 4 tribulations are. The key is that to become a tribulation crosser, there must be a prerequisite for cultivation. That is the 9th level of the Jinden realm. But according to the current known information, Mo Pidong's cultivation before his death was only the 5th level of the Jinden realm. But on the other hand, as the old Master Wei said, once an accident occurs during the tribulation of the heart demon tribulation, the cultivator really has no ability to control his body. At that time, the consciousness of the cultivator was already in another space, and it was unclear whether he even knew that something was wrong with his body. Then Lin Li thought of the true face of Mo Pidong, a heartless person who spent more than 10 years setting up a net for his own nephew to possess his body, and who seemed to care about the clan after possessing the body, but actually had no sense of belonging. It doesn't seem strange that such a person hides his own cultivation from the clan members? So logically, this is not contradictory. The contradiction lies in another layer of logic. How did Mo Pidong reach the 9th level of the perfect state of the Jinden realm before he was 90 years old? To be honest, the aptitude of Mo Xiaonan, who is possessed by Mo Pidong, is indeed excellent, and it can be said that he is 1 in 10,000 among ordinary people. The mutated golden earth dual spiritual roots plus the golden sword art that can increase the combat power by 1.5 times can even compete with single spiritual roots under certain circumstances. But if compared horizontally with those single spiritual roots, Mo Xiaonin's aptitude is just that. Not to mention the top or even the middle sequence, it is not easy to be considered at the tail and barely not fall behind. Theoretically, the probability of a single spiritual root cultivator in the Great Mo realm breaking through the nascent soul realm is not low. As long as they do not perish before the core formation realm and have normal resources, the probability of breaking through the nascent soul realm is basically more than half. But probability is probability. According to the information the rabbits have, the average age of a nascent soul cultivator breaking through the barrier of a great realm is about 300 years. Even the most successful single spiritual root cultivator will take more than 200 years to break through the nascent soul realm. This is an accumulation of cultivation. Maybe it will be 2 years faster or 2 years slower depending on the person, but it is always in the same range. And how old was Mo Pidong before his death? 86 years old. This is much younger than the youngest nascent soul realm cultivator known to the rabbits, which can be said to violate the law of cultivation. Because of this, Patriarch Wei did not think of this possibility at first, and his tone later was not very certain. After all, this is too outrageous. But as a famous elementary school student of the God of Death said, when a problem eliminates all impossibilities, the remaining answer is still the truth, no matter how unacceptable it is. Strictly speaking, the current situation of Mo Pidong's skeleton has not ruled out all possibilities. After all, no one can tell whether there will be any other supernatural things. But from the known information alone, heart demon tribulation is indeed the answer that best fits the known situation. Again, unless the black spiritual energy is so abnormal that it is instantly fatal. Mo Pidong must have left some traces of movement. Then Lin Li thought of something and said to Li Yan, "Xiao Li, is Mo Pidong's golden elixir still in your laboratory?" Li Yan nodded quickly and replied, "Yes, it has been kept in the E3 series containment device. When Mo Pidong's skeleton was discovered, Lin Xiaoming once found a small ball the size of a goose egg in his abdomen. Later, after identification by the old Master Wei and others, it was determined that this was a golden elixir with dual attributes of gold and earth. However, it has been completely inactivated and has no practical use." Wang Qiang did not give up and studied it for a while, but finally gave up. Since then, this golden elixir has been stored in a safe container and sealed. According to Wang Qiang, even if this thing has no scientific research value, it can be put into the museum in the future. Haven't you seen that the broken bowls used by the cavemen to eat have become cultural relics? Therefore, it must be taken care of in any case to avoid any accidents. After getting Li Yan's affirmation, Lin Li hesitated for a while, and finally said, "Xiao Li, aren't Professor Ma and Deputy Captain Zheng going to Ziqiang City to hand over the floating formation these days? You go and take out the inactivated golden elixir, let them take it to Ziqiang City, and find Yang Buli's channel to identify it. Maybe the master of Zibeoxun has better eyesight than us and can help us determine Mo Pidong's realm. If Mo Pidong is really in the great perfection of the Jinden realm, then the black spiritual energy may be an extraordinary thing." Note, I promised everyone the third update, and I will code until 4 in the morning. I will strive for 3 more updates today, not including this one. Can you vote for the monthly ticket? Space. Chapter 327 The Second Business Mission. Because the remains of Jinden realm practitioners are currently in a solitary state, it is difficult for the rabbits to determine Mo Pidong's realm before his death by comparing the details of the bones. There are few third-level monsters that are equivalent to Jinden realm practitioners. However, the structure of monsters and humans is completely different, and there is nothing in common in their cultivation methods except that they also absorb spiritual energy. Therefore, let alone third-level monsters, even fourth-level monsters cannot be compared horizontally with practitioners. In addition, the people of the Wei family know very little about the situation after the Jinden realm, so Lin Li naturally set his sights on Zibeoxun in Ziqiang City. Previously, Yang Bali and the rabbits reached a very important trade agreement, which is to exchange communication technology with floating formations. Now nearly 3 months have passed. The rabbits' equipment has been deployed and transported not long ago, and they are ready to set off to Ziqiang City for delivery. Therefore, Lin Li planned to let Zheng Gucheng and Ma Ning take Mo Pidong's Jinden to be identified while traveling, so as to judge Mo Pidong's realm before his death. As for whether Yang Bali and others would have evil thoughts of coveting, Lin Li was not worried at all. Mo Pidong's golden elixir has been weathered for hundreds of years. It has no practical value except for collection. If it is really sold, it may not even be able to buy a good second-level talisman. To put it bluntly, with the current trade relationship between Zhejiang City and the rabbits, let alone the weathered and ineffective golden elixir. Even if it is a newly taken out 9th-level golden elixir of the Jiandan realm, Yang Bali will not be greedy. After all, the golden elixir is not the Yuanying, and the two are not at the same level in terms of value. As for Lin Li's obsession with determining Mo Pidong's cultivation before his death, it is naturally to further confirm the characteristics of the black spiritual energy. Perhaps some of the less popular students will feel strange. Why do the rabbits still want to study the black spiritual energy when they know that there is a problem with it? The reason is very simple: research does not mean application. The essence of research is to explore the detailed principles of matter. The practitioners and monsters of the Great Mo realm obviously have no good way to deal with the black spiritual energy, so the black spiritual energy is definitely more harmful than beneficial to the creatures of the Great Mo realm. But the rabbits have a different style of painting. Their homeland is a world of science and technology. Regardless of which world is better or worse, at least the mode of exploring things and the foundation of the world are completely different. For example, the barrier of the Mo family secret room. Mo Pidong was unable to break through its limitations until his death. Theoretically, even a Yuanying realm practitioner could not do anything with it. But the rabbits solved the problem in just a few hours. Who knows if the black aura is also like this? Anyway, it's okay to try it. If there is really no way, just seal it up. If the bad part of the black aura can be removed, the remaining part will be able to increase the speed of the warrior's practice again. Of course, all of the above statements are based on the fact that Mo Pidong is indeed a 9th-level practitioner in the Jiandan realm. Therefore, determining the realm of the Jiandan has become a top priority. A week later, on February 3, 2023, the second batch of trade delegations led by Zhang Gucheng and Maning, deputy captains of the Xinhou camp, officially set off. Compared with the first trade delegation, this trade delegation has more people, but the purpose is clearer. After all, the core trade mission is just one: exchange communication equipment for floating arrays. Another thing worth mentioning is that, this time the rabbits were relatively flamboyant, and brought along a lot of gains from the Little Lotus Seed battle. Among them were not only first and second level materials, but also part of the body of the third level stick insect monster, as well as some other non-key parts of third level monsters. After all, this is the Great Mo realm, and the value of trade between the two sides is not low, so it is appropriate to show off some muscle. Now that the Little Lotus Seed Mountain battle has been over for more than 4 months, the confidentiality is no longer as high as it was at the beginning. Even when the headquarters estimated Yang Bali's actions, they had already prepared for Yang Bali to infer through many clues and thus know the details of this annihilation battle. After all, Yang Bali had seen the power of the Happy Stick and the Type 56, and it was not difficult to deduce the answer by comparing the traces at the scene. At that time, the rabbits also formulated a series of plans to deal with the spies sent by Yang Bali. However, it was strange that, at this time, more than 2 months had passed since the latest deadline guessed by the think tank. Yang Bali did not mention any signs of the Little Lotus Seed Mountain battle. In addition, during the Battle of Xiaolianzi Mountain, although Luo Xiaote, a tool, ate some of the remains of the monsters. But in fact, the number of monsters brought back by the rabbits is still not small. It is true that the rabbits are patients with late-stage collecting addiction, but this symptom depends on the situation. Some of the monster materials in the hands of the rabbits are obviously of no value. Instead of keeping them in stock, it is better to exchange them for spirit stones to buy some talisman materials. Anyway, the price of monster materials in the Great Mo realm has skyrocketed recently, and it is only profitable to sell them. So the rabbits thought about it. In this case, let's clear the inventory. At the same time, compared with the first trade group, Maning and Zhang Gucheng seemed much more relaxed. First, it was because Gu Zhenming and his team's existing intelligence system was relatively complete. Maning and others' task was to sell monster materials and exchange them for floating formations, without any requirement to collect intelligence. Second, there was no need to worry too much about safety. This is the benefit of having a strong force behind you. Whether in the local area or the Great Mo realm, as long as you have a strong force behind you, even if you are a reporter with a baby voice and run into a drug den, you can still become a tough guy. Here is a recommendation for an up master, Liu Xiaoqian, You can go to Station B to search. The total number of people in this trade group exceeded 300, of which more than 200 were logistics and security personnel. And the rest were technical workers responsible for installing base stations and antenna arrays. After everything was ready, the trade group officially set off at 9 a.m. on February 3, 2023, local time. Since Chichen City is not short from Zhejiang City, this time the trade group still took the way of traveling by flying boat through Linyuan City, a transit station. However, it was different from the first time. This time Zhejiang specially coordinated another flying boat to transport local personnel at a fixed point. At the same time, Manning and others were no longer riding in the big bunk bed like the green skin car, but in an independent single room with exquisite decoration. This time, the flying boat did not need to transfer to other cities, and it had a taste of fixed point express, so it took less than a day to arrive outside Zhejiang City. As soon as he got off the flying boat, Manning saw Gu Junming and a pile of spirit stones waiting here. No, with Yang Bali. Yang Bali seemed very enthusiastic at the moment, and it was obvious that he had made a lot of profit in the previous 2 happy stick transactions. Seeing everyone leaving the cabin, Yang Bali took the initiative to come up. Shopkeeper Ma, long time no see, everything is fine. Perhaps in order to cater to the rabbit's habits, Yang Bali deliberately used the vocabulary that Wang Kaiang taught him this time. Ani has prepared wine and food, and has been waiting in the mansion for a long time. Manning. Note, there is a lack of extras. You can leave a message here, soldiers or cotters, below the department level, including department level. I received a temporary notice that I have to take an online course for riders today, so I will update this first and make up for it tomorrow. It should be related to the recent Kingling operation. I was specifically asked to attend the meeting. I hope I won't be asked to revise the text or something. It made me a little nervous, and I was typing nervously. Chapter 328 Yang Family Courtyard. At the exit of the flying boat, Manning's expression was a little strange at this time. I don't know if you have watched The Romance of the Three Kingdoms with Japanese dubbing. Zhang Fei's big and strong appearance, when he said Oni-chan, I don't know how many people were shocked. And Yang Bali's style was even more broken than Zhang Fei. After all, his outfit was more like Kong Ming than Zhang Fei. It was a pity that Wang Kaiang didn't come with the group this time, otherwise Manning would have to hit this girl on the head with a ballpoint pen. But the title is just a small matter after all, which belongs to the bad taste of a certain older leftover woman. Therefore, after the initial disharmony, Manning quickly adjusted his state. He performed the common etiquette of the Great Mo world with Yang Bali. Shopkeeper Yang, thanks to you, everything went well. This time, Manning still negotiated with Zhejiang as a shopkeeper, and Zhang Guchen's external identity was just a small chief clerk. Although his rank in the camp was higher than Manning, his main purpose of joining the group this time was to use the floating formation, and he did not participate in other matters. Therefore, the task of being in charge was given to Manning. After returning the gift, Yang Bali glanced at Manning's many entourage with his peripheral vision, and a glimmer flashed in his eyes. As mentioned above, this time Manning and others were indeed more high profile, and they were obviously preparing to do something big. Then the group entered the city under the guidance of Yang Bali. The entourage was settled in an inn under the name of Zhejiang. This inn was completely vacated and was specially used to receive guests from the Teosu Chamber of Commerce. Manning and his companions came to the Yang family compound with a space bag containing antenna equipment. Compared with the main house of the Wei family and the Mo family mansion, the area of the Yang family compound is much larger. Manning and others estimated that the area of the Yang family compound is at least more than 6 million square meters. That is, 6 square kilometers, 9,000 acres of land. In addition, according to the information collected by Gu Junming, who was in charge of Tae building, there are more than 4,000 members of the Yang family within the 5 service, including various maids, servants, cooks and grooms. Among them, the permanent population in the house is over 10,000 all year round. After all, it is a large family of Yuanying with a history of nearly 1,000 years, so it is normal for the family to be prosperous. Among the thousands of Yang family members, the one with the highest cultivation level is Yang Wenbing, the elder of the Yang family. This person's cultivation level has reached the 8th level of the Jiandin realm, and it is said that he can break through the 9th level at any time. In addition to Yang Wenbing, the Yang family has nearly 20 Jiandin realm practitioners and more than 100 foundation building realm practitioners. The ratio of the foundation building realm of the Wei family in Chixin City is about 60-1. That is, there are 3 foundation building realm practitioners among nearly 200 family members. This number includes the purple-robe old man who fell before. The ratio of the Yang family is higher, about 35-1, including the Jiandin realm. After all, the cultivation resources of Ziqiang City and Chixin City are different. Ziqiang City is one of the 7 core cities in the southern region and is a heart-level city in a region. From the perspective of the world of Damo realm, Ziqiang City may still be a little far from the super first line, but it is definitely a first line level. In this case, the clan members don't say that they eat pills as candy beans. At least most of the time there is no shortage of resources. In addition, considering the development plan of a family, this ratio is definitely lower in reality. Even if the Yang family has a hidden hand who has reached the perfect stage of the Dan or the Yuanying stage, the rabbits will not be surprised at all. Because the rabbits themselves are also in this habit, lol. At the same time, compared with the extreme publicity of the Mo family's mansion, the style of the Yang family is low-key and luxurious. There are no gold and silver ornaments on the outside, which looks very ancient. But if you observe carefully, you will find that even the wood of the thatched house is very valuable. Under the guidance of Yang Bali, Maning and others went straight all the way. Finally, they met Yang Wanli, the head of the Yang family, who had been waiting there for a long time, in the reception room. Yang Wanli's face is extremely majestic, and his facial lines are not as soft as those of a businessman like Yang Bali. He looks like a reliable person who can make a decision with a word. Of course, expressions actually depend on appearance. Yang Wanli, who has a decent appearance, is cool and reliable. If he changes to an ugly one, he will be Xiao Achuan. After sitting down, Yang Bali took the initiative to pour a glass of wine for Ma Ning and Zheng Guchen. Shopkeeper Ma has come from afar, and the journey is not easy. I and my brother will prepare some light wine. Please don't dislike the bland wine. Ma Ning glanced at the various delicacies on the table, including some high-end ingredients that he didn't recognize but looked like they were not affordable for ordinary people. He forced a smile on his face. Shopkeeper Yang, that's not true. Such a sumptuous banquet, how can it be said to be bland? Thanks to Shopkeeper Yang and the head of the Yang family, this old man and your host are very embarrassed. If there is any loss of composure, please forgive me. Then everyone praised each other for business and officially opened the banquet. After the meal started, Yang Bali first asked curiously about the customs and practices behind the Shanghai mountains. Ma Ning, who had been prepared for this, naturally did not panic at all and told the story in a leisurely manner. There are many tribes behind the Shanghai mountains. The Teozu Chamber of Commerce of the old man and others comes from one of the large clans. People nicknamed it Fengling Yuang. My ancestor had a strange person named Liu Leo. She uprooted a weeping willow at Degukao and killed Huoshong with warm wine. After deciding to label themselves as visitors from the Shanghai mountains, the rabbits did not stop collecting information about the Shanghai mountains. As a result, the rabbits suddenly discovered that the area behind the Shanghai mountains was extremely vast, and the information exchange between them was very rare. Some tribes even did not know each other existed even though they were dozens of miles apart. So the rabbits thought, why not just make up a story ourselves? Anyway, it was just a statement to fool the outside world. Yang Bali and his people could not and did not have the ability to go to the back of the Shanghai mountains to verify this matter. And it was a coincidence that there were several riders in the camp. Among them, he comes from Jianghu and Dreamtalker are both professional Xiangsha riders, and their stories are much more interesting than the information collected by the rabbits. So, a set of stitched monster stories appeared. It must be said that this kind of carefully compiled story is still very attractive to the natives of the Great Mo realm. Yang Bali asked politely at first, but he gradually became fascinated as he listened. Even his sister Yang Wanli was interested. Seeing that everyone was talking about it, Ma Ning secretly brought in some private goods and got a lot of information about the Great Mo realm. For example, there are many branches in our tribe. One of the branches called Chuan rides a creature called Gun Gun every day when he goes to work. I wonder if there are similar creatures in the southern region, and so on. The guests and hosts were very happy. When there were only a few leftovers left in front of everyone, Yang Bali secretly looked at Yang Wanli. Then he turned around and asked Ma Ning, Shopkeeper Ma, should we talk business? Note, I heard that a light column appeared in Shenyang. Those who are interested can search it. Haha. As expected, we talked about the Qinglang operation last night, but it was mainly a reminder. There was no request to change the text. It's a good thing. Chapter 329 Delivery. In the reception room. Hearing Yang Boli's words, Ma Ning's expression remained unchanged, but his heart was startled. The real show is coming. Although the rabbits had reached a preliminary trade agreement with the Yang family before. But the two words preliminary are enough to explain everything. These days, anything can happen before things are completely settled. For example, a certain Premier League relegation team, the one that lost 9 goals in 3 rounds. At the beginning, Higuain had already entered the physical examination room, just waiting for the final official announcement. As a result, 2 hours later, the little smoker actually showed up and signed with the Naples. To put it bluntly, if Yang Bali cancelled the transaction because of his hemorrhoids and was in a bad mood, no matter what the consequences of this really happened, at least a floating formation would not be obtained in a short time. So Ma Ning's attitude towards the transaction is still relatively serious, for fear of any accidents. He carefully took out 2 space bags from his body and put them on the table. Shopkeeper Yang, Master Yang. These 2 space bags contain the core array of our ancestral communication magic weapon. By the way, I mentioned this to Shopkeeper Yang at the beginning. This array is large in size and needs a wide and safe area to be placed. Shopkeeper Yang, upon hearing this, Yang Bali immediately replied, "The venue has been prepared. It is in the clan land not far from the side of the reception room." Then he quickly glanced at the leftovers on the table and asked tentatively, "If Shopkeeper Ma doesn't feel tired, how about we deliver the goods now? By the way, the other items we are trading have been prepared and can be handed over to you at any time." Ma Ning's expression did not change, and he cursed in his heart that he was an old fox. He naturally would not believe the second half of Yang Boli's words. Before verifying the effect of the communication equipment, the other party would definitely not be assured to hand over the array to him. In addition, Ma Ning was not so low in EQ that he would take the initiative to ask for compensation first. This behavior was almost the same as flipping the table. Yang Boli's approach is to make sure that you won't speak, which not only saves face but also makes people feel quite open. His level is much higher than Tang Si, whom he had met before. However, although the second half of Yang Boli's words cannot be trusted, the previous proposal is still very valuable, which is exactly what Ma Ning wants. So he took advantage of the situation and agreed to Yang Boli's proposal. "The host invites me, how dare I refuse? Please lead the way, Manager Yang." Then the group walked through the courtyard in a mighty manner, and Yang Bali introduced them as they walked. Finally, they came to an extremely open area. The specifications of this area are about 200 meters x 200 meters, and there are several warehouse-like houses around it, and there are no high-rise buildings. It looks like a warehouse that is not particularly important but has a good location. After arriving at the center of the venue, Ma Ning handed the 2 space bags to Wei Qiangshen, and Wei Qiangshen used his divine consciousness to take out dozens of wooden containers. Then he looked at a middle-aged man beside him and said in Chinese, "Mr. Wang, please follow the plan." The middle-aged man's expression was serious. And he touched the calluses on his hands and said, "Understood." The middle-aged man called Mr. Wang was named Wang Jiaqi, 45 years old this year. He was from a large-scale Shanghai project center in Kaianan, and one of the researchers of the Shanghai project. He was also the chief engineer responsible for the installation of the antenna array this time. It was mentioned before. The effective range of the antenna array agreed by the rabbits and the Yang family was 750 kilometers, while the transmission distance of the antenna array currently in service is generally more than 6,000 kilometers. The 2,500-kilometer antenna array that the rabbits found in Jiao was considered a small specification, not to mention the 750-kilometer mini-model. So this time the rabbits could only go to the War Reserve warehouse to look for the previous generation of inventory, and finally locked on this antique with a transmission distance of 830 kilometers. Considering that there is no radio interference in the Great Mo realm, the maximum distance of this device in the Great Mo realm may even reach 900 kilometers. Zhejiang City has made a profit again, damn it. Previously, a well-known student raised a question, saying that the power of the antenna array cannot transmit video. Here we have to mention a question, strictly speaking. Antenna array, array antenna, and array antenna are 4 different concepts. Are you dizzy? You are right to be dizzy. This thing is so brain-burning. although most of the time, the above 4 words actually refer to the same thing. Even many radio professionals can't tell these things apart. But in certain circumstances, these concepts are slightly different. Among them, the antenna array is a large-scale device at the quasi-sky eye level, or most of the time the media will directly call this thing the sky eye. And the well-known students calculated the antenna array. Large-scale antenna arrays are a natural extension of MIMO technology. By increasing the number of antennas on the original transmitting side by an order of magnitude such as 64 and 128, the transmission efficiency is improved. Antenna arrays are more sophisticated. It is a large non-clustered device involving the Hertz vector. The bandwidth of this device can easily transmit long waves, and many transoceanic communications rely on long waves. For example, the E765 that the rabbits brought from Jiao before is a typical example. Those who don't understand why this thing is in Jiao can think about what kind of ocean fishing vessel center there is in Jiao. I won't talk about the old antique model that the rabbits found this time because it is confidential. In short, it is a winding rod antenna. The basic structure of this antenna is 2 identical half-wave dipoles placed at right angles to each other and fed in phase. This is also the array that is closest to the concept of array. It can increase the gain by stacking multiple winding rod antennas along the vertical axis. This structure is called a stacked array. The working modes of the winding rod antenna are divided into normal and axial, and the polarization mode is different in different working modes. In normal mode, the antenna radiates horizontal polarization, and the polarization direction is perpendicular to the antenna axis. In axial mode, the radiated wave is a circularly polarized wave around the antenna axis. This mode is actually a technology 2 or a generation and a half ago. Currently, most antenna technologies use active types such as logarithmic periodic or end-fire. However, although this technology is relatively old, it is stable. Even if its transmission distance can reach 900 kilometers, it is still not as good as the modern antennas that can easily reach 5,000 or 6,000 kilometers. But within its transmission range, it is as stable as a defense tower. Zhejiang City is obviously a long-term meal ticket, a long-term partner. So the rabbits really did not intend to cheat Yang Bali and others in this regard. This is also the usual style of the rabbits. I may make a lot of money, but you will definitely not lose. As mentioned before, the floating array is indeed valuable, but the value of communication technology to Zhejiang City is countless times higher. Even if the rabbits develop interstellar travel technology by studying the array in the future, Yang Bali and his team will not suffer any losses. So strictly speaking, this trade should be a win-win situation. The rabbits win twice, and Zhejiang City wins once. The site returns to the original place. Although this set of previous generation antenna arrays from a reserve warehouse in Kaianan is not as good as many modern descendants, it is really not small in size and covers an area of more than 10,000 square meters. Otherwise, the command center would not have ranged nearly 100 technicians to assemble it. Therefore, considering that the assembly may take 2 to 3 big days, Wang Jiaqi and others first assembled a small base station with a communication range of 30 kilometers and gave it to Zhejiang's people to get used to operating it. Maning found Yang Bali and took out the ineffective golden elixir of Mo Pidong from his body. Note, there may be another chapter in the early morning. I will try my best, so it is maybe. Chapter 330. A few things about the golden elixir. As mentioned before, the antenna array brought by the rabbits this time has a volume of more than 10,000 square meters and a height of more than 30 meters. Therefore, assembly and debugging are not so easy, and require a lot of manpower and time. According to the preliminary agreement between Maning and Yang Bali, the entire assembly process is expected to take 2 to 3 big Mori days, which is less than half a month of local time. During this period, the Yang family will provide practitioners to complete high-altitude operations, just like the Wei family's toolman at the beginning. There is no way. Who made it impossible to transport large equipment to Zhejiang City? Of course. The time limit of 3 big Mori days is the longest period, that is, the established construction period. If it is Kunlun slaves who do this, then there is nothing to say. They will definitely deliver the work on time, and may even delay it. But the rabbits are different from Kunlun slaves. They have no emotional disputes and are more diligent and capable. With the infrastructure ability of the rabbits who are good at creating miracles, this time will most likely be shortened a lot. After the team led by Wang Jiaqi started work, the head of the family, Yang Wanli, stayed at the scene for half an hour, and when he saw that everything was normal, he said goodbye and left. Yang Bali stayed at the temporary construction site, acting as both a supervisor and a middleman, responsible for the dispatch and handover between the two ends. Therefore, Manning did not spend much effort and easily brought him to the grove nearby. Fortunately, the rabbits who came this time were all serious people, and there were no rotten girls. Otherwise, with those weird ideas that Officer Medjur and Dr. Agassi could write books, they might be able to conceive some scenes that would destroy the world view. After arriving at the edge of the grove, Manning first looked around like a peddler selling electronic watches in the 1980s. After making sure that no one was paying attention, he turned to Yang Bali and said, "Shopkeeper Yang, I am sorry to ask you to come here privately, mainly because there is an item that I hope you can take a look at. By the way, let me tell you first. It is not a new product that can be mass-produced, but something we accidentally got a few days ago." Yang Bali heard this, and a trace of disappointment flashed in his heart. If Manning hadn't explained, he would have really thought that the rabbits had something good to sell to him. But there was no other way. As the saying goes, once you have tasted the marrow, you will know the taste. Yang Bali has already experienced the joy of being a middleman. The previous two trades of happy sticks brought Zebaoksun tens of thousands of spiritual stones in revenue. In Yang Bali's opinion, this part of the profit is even much higher than the net profit of the rabbits after deducting the cost. Although the other hemorrhoid cream did not make much profit because of its low price, its special curative effect has consolidated a lot of connections for Zebaoksun. From a long-term perspective, its importance may not be much worse than that of happy sticks. Therefore, Yang Bali still looks forward to Manning coming up with something good. After all, whether it is hemorrhoid cream, happy sticks or communication arrays, it shows that the rabbit's family background is definitely not simple. Yang Bali is sure that the rabbits must have other special goods in their hands. Maybe it's food, maybe it's clothes, anyway, there must be more. So under this premise, although Yang Bali felt a little disappointed, his expression became more enthusiastic. "Oh? I wonder if there is anything I can do to help you, Shopkeeper Ma. Please feel free to tell me. I have studied the field of treasure appraisal, and I may be able to help a little." Yang Bali's words were not really boastful. Without some skills in treasure appraisal, he could not have achieved the position of the shopkeeper of Zebaoksun. Therefore, Manning did not keep him in suspense, and immediately took out a small box from his pocket and handed it to Yang Bali. "Shopkeeper Yang, please take a look at this." Yang Bali took the box with both hands, and his expression was very solemn. Then he carefully explored it with his divine sense, and after confirming that there was no hidden hand, he gently opened it. After seeing the items clearly, his pupils shrank visibly. Such a big golden elixir. Then, before Manning could speak, Yang Bali shook his head again. "It's a pity that the spiritual energy inside has long disappeared, leaving only an empty shell, otherwise it must be worth a lot of money." Originally, Manning was about to ask about the realm of the golden elixir, but he paused after hearing the second half of the sentence. The words that were about to come out were forcibly changed to another sentence. "Shopkeeper Yang, from what you mean? Can a golden elixir with a high degree of integrity be sold for spirit stones? Look at what you said, how fresh it is." Yang Bali looked at him happily, and then realized that since Shopkeeper Ma came from the Cheyenne Mountains, his cultivation method was somewhat different from the mainstream. So he took the initiative to explain. "Shopkeeper Ma, you may not know this. Under normal circumstances, a complete golden elixir of a cultivator can be used to refine the cultivator's secrets and even insights during his lifetime. And the techniques that can be cultivated to the stage of forming an elixir are not bad, to be honest. As long as it costs a low cost to copy it, you can harvest thousands or even tens of thousands of spirit stones. In addition, the golden elixir contains a large amount of refined spiritual energy. If the attributes of the main techniques of both parties are the same, the later generations can directly absorb that part of the spiritual energy to increase their cultivation. In addition, the golden elixir is extremely strong. There is a secret method of refining the golden elixir in the Great Mo realm, which can refine the golden elixir into a powerful shock bead. Once this shock bead explodes, ordinary people in the stage of forming an elixir have almost no means to defend against damage, and they will be disabled if they don't die. The above three steps are basically a progressive relationship. In other words, you can get spirit stones, cultivation, and registration methods for one golden elixir. In this way, how can the value of the golden elixir be low? For example, some families with elders in the stage of forming an elixir who have passed away often have their thresholds trampled by buyers after the first 7 days. Moning nodded suddenly. A long time ago, the rabbits had tried to understand the purpose of the golden elixir. However, due to limited information channels, the rabbits did not have much actual information in the end. The laboratory, by analogy with the composition of monster crystals, proposed that the golden elixir of practitioners may contain a lot of spiritual energy. And from this, it was judged that the golden elixir most likely has the function of increasing cultivation. Now it seems that the laboratory's speculation is basically the same as the actual situation. As for the other two, they are purely secrets in the field of cultivation, and no matter how much association is made, it is definitely impossible to explain. Yang Boli's introduction is an unexpected gain, enriching the rabbit's database. After all, this kind of information is similar to the situation of those who are difficult to understand will not understand it, and it is still troublesome to inquire about it, and it requires a certain level. Seeing that the conversation box about the golden elixir has been opened, Yang Bali can't run away for a while. Therefore, Moning was not in a hurry to determine Mo Pidong's realm. He just heard him ask curiously, "Shopkeeper Yang, since the golden elixir is so valuable, is there anyone in the Mo world who specializes in hunting down giant and realm practitioners in order to obtain the golden elixir?" Note: 2 consecutive updates. You can directly turn to the next chapter. Are you surprised? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 331. A few things about the golden elixir. Hunting the golden pill. Hearing Moning's words, Yang Boli's expression suddenly became more serious. Money can move people's hearts. There are thieves and robbers in the mortal world, and naturally there are such evil-minded scums on the road of cultivation. Especially in recent years, the spiritual energy of the Great Mo realm has been scarce, and cultivation has become more and more difficult. Some powerful practitioners suffer from not having enough spiritual energy to cultivate, so they embark on this evil path of seeking other people's fruits. This kind of scum has a nickname, called Pill Plunderer. For example, an old uncle of mine, who is at the 2nd level of the Giant realm, was unfortunately killed on his way out, and his pill disappeared. Moning listened to Yang Boli's narration and frowned unconsciously. To be honest, he is not a particularly saintly person. At least he will not be like some internet entities, who will whitewash the character of the ignorant deceived girl for the murderer like Lao Rongzi. He will not ask the children of the innocent carpenter who died to forgive their father's murderer. But not saintly or not saintly, Moning still has a basic view of good and evil and human nature. Therefore, he had a strong innate resistance to the behavior of killing people to get pills that Yang Bali said. Then he asked in confusion, "Shopkeeper Yang, don't the Yuanying realm and the Great Mo realm care about this kind of thing?" Yuanying realm? Yang Bali heard this and sneered. There must be a lot of polite words, such as those who are found to kill and rob pills will be listed as public enemies of the cultivation world, and all forces will hunt them down. But in fact, most of the cultivators who can become pill robbers are above the 5th level of the Giant realm. How many cities have the ability to hunt down strong people in this realm? If you want to kill pill robbers 100% without cost, only the Yuanying realm can do it. In fact, several big figures in the Yuanying realm have indeed paid attention to this kind of problem and killed several pill robbers. However, the Great Mo realm is vast, and the Yuanying realm has to consume a lot of spiritual energy every time it moves. They found that every time they killed the villains, there was no practical meaning except to show justice. Therefore, over time, those big figures in the Yuanying realm were too lazy to care about this kind of thing. Anyway, even if those pill-stealing villains lost their minds, they would not attack those who had backers in the Giant realm. Of course, everyone condemned this kind of thing on the surface. No matter what, pill stealing is definitely not acceptable, but that's all. However, this kind of situation has been repeatedly banned in the black market. Those people put the looted golden elixirs in the name of the deceased elders of the tribe, and everyone pretended to be confused. Yang Boli's tone was full of obvious resentment. Although he was a typical businessman, his character was not so bad that it was hopeless. This can be seen from the fact that he was willing to contact Manning, a mortal, before Zbaoxun reached a trade agreement with the rabbits. Of course, he certainly couldn't avoid some flaws. For example, some concubines that would be easily crushed by boxers in the native land, and occasionally punishing servants, etc. But this has something to do with the traditional concept of the Great Mo realm. You can't expect everyone to be perfect. There are not many such people in the native land. In short, you can say he is a means or a nature. It is an established fact that Yang Bali abides by the rules of trade. His character is still there. Naturally, his humanity is not lacking. In addition, his relatives once died at the hands of pale plunderers, so Yang Boli's remarks were obviously full of personal emotions. My uncle was born with the dual spiritual roots of water and wood. He reached the second level of the Jindan realm when he was over 60 years old. He is not a peerless genius, but he can be called an accomplished person. My uncle is humble and kind to others. He often helps beggars on the road and is willing to give advice to the younger generations who are not from the Yang family. Oh, right. Zhao's Hike, Zhao's Hubo, who was responsible for collecting materials on the monster in the east of the city, was the descendant of a refugee brought back by my uncle. That year, I was only 20 years old, and my uncle went out to travel, but who would have thought that he would be killed by a pill-stealing cultivator? When his remains were found, the sea in his abdomen was broken, bloody and blurred, and he died with his eyes open. Later, my father determined from the injuries that the murderer was Gehe Sanran, who was at the 7th level of the Jindan realm, and led the elders of the clan to hunt him down. At that time, there was a Yuanying master in the south region, and Gehe Sanran was only 300 miles away from where he practiced. However, the Yuanying master ignored it. He even refused to comply with the request of the clan elders to stop or kill him, and let Gehe Sanran escape from the southern region. Yang Bali was talking, and there was a hint of satisfaction in his tone, but perhaps God has eyes. That Yuanying master died not long ago. The body was separated. It was a horrible sight. Maning had been listening to Yang Bali quietly, and was stunned when he heard the words. He immediately thought of something and asked, could it be one of the two nascent souls who died in Yaok? Yang Bali nodded and said, yes, this man is nicknamed Duan Laogwei, and he is also one of the legends of the southern region. After his death, the Duan family was instantly in turmoil. Although there is a demon repairer to protect him, the means in secret have never stopped. I heard that his Jindan realm son died at the hands of pill plunderers not long ago. It's really a good turn of events. After lamenting the impermanence of the world, Yang Bali returned his sight to the golden elixir in his hand. Shopkeeper Ma, I thought of some unpleasant things. I'm really sorry for saying too much. Let's talk about your business. What do you need me to do? Seeing this, Maning also quickly came back to his senses. The ear return recording has recorded all of Yang Boli's words. Naturally, other experts will do the analysis, and he doesn't need to worry about it. He pointed at Yang Boli's golden elixir and said, Shopkeeper Yang, could you please identify the owner of this golden elixir and tell me what level of cultivation he was in when he was alive? Yang Bali placed the golden elixir in his palm and examined it carefully. Maning did not say anything to interrupt him, but just watched quietly. After about a few minutes, Yang Bali raised his head, pondered for a moment and said, Shopkeeper Ma, may I ask what realm the master of the golden elixir was in his lifetime? Maning immediately replied, a mutated golden earth dual spiritual root. Mutated dual spiritual roots. Yang Bali blinked and said, the size of a cultivator's initial golden elixir is related to the spiritual root aptitude. For example, 3 spiritual roots with good matching and at the same time a fortuitous encounter have also been recorded as breaking through the elixir realm in the era of abundant spiritual energy. The golden elixir of this type of 3 spiritual root cultivator is the smallest, but only the size of a cow's eye. Then there are ordinary dual spiritual roots, about the size of a pigeon egg. Mutated dual spiritual roots will be a little bigger, about the size of a chicken egg. As for a single spiritual root, it is the largest, about the size of a goose egg. On this basis, every time a cultivator breaks through a small realm, the size of the golden elixir will increase by 1 point. Maning nodded thoughtfully. The knowledge that seems useful but is useless in the short term has increased JPG. Then Yang Bali shook the golden elixir and said, this golden elixir is quite big. If it is a mutant dual spiritual root, its owner's realm should be between the 9th level of Jindan and the great perfection of Jindan and the nascent soul tribulation. Note, I have updated twice today. I will try to update another chapter in the evening. Also, how is everyone's income from watching videos recently? I think I am not the only one who is not rich. Chapter 332: A larger transaction. As a core member of the Yang family in Zhejiang City, Yang Bali, who is also the chief manager of Zabaoxun, is undoubtedly an extremely authoritative expert in identification. Although his cultivation level is only the 8th level of foundation building, he has no shortage of opportunities to come into contact with higher level items on weekdays. Not to mention the extremely important things for practitioners, such as the golden elixir. Therefore, since he dared to say the previous sentence, it means that he is almost 100% sure that Mo Pidong is at the level of a false infant cultivator who has reached the 9th level of the elixir and has passed the heart demon tribulation. In this way, the characteristics of black spiritual energy have almost been determined in concept. It can greatly increase the speed of cultivation of practitioners, but the cost is that there will be withdrawal reactions similar to silver bead powder. In addition, based on Mo Pidong's black skeleton, another unconfirmed speculation can be drawn. Even if he has a large number of black spiritual stones that can be used for sustainable cultivation, the final fate of the absorber may not be much better. It is likely to lead to other ominous things, such as being muddle-headed and covered with red hair in his later years, disappearing inexplicably on a night with red wind blowing, etc. In addition, there are extraordinary powers in the Great Mo realm, and some strange things may happen. For example, Mo Pidong's skeleton suddenly revived, and the art of the bone of the Sin domain will eventually become the king. Therefore, after discussion, the command decided to seal Mo Pidong's skeleton with liquid nitrogen and keep it under strict supervision. After understanding the problem of Mo Pidong's remaining golden elixir, Manning called Wei Qiangsheng from a distance and took out another space bag. Then he said to Yang Bali, "Shopkeeper Yang, this space bag contains some monster materials recently obtained by our Chamber of Commerce. I wonder if you are interested in digesting it." I have to say, the Mo family in Yangbai City is really a conscientious courier, and it must be given a 5-star rating like that. Shen Logistics. At the beginning, the rabbits only had 2 space bags in their hands, one of which was from the Wei family. However, after breaking through Yangbai City, the rabbits got 2 large space bags from Morrison. You can think about it. What kind of family is the Mo family? At the beginning, it was a typical landlord and rich man, an extreme enjoyment party. In addition, the Mo family also needs to regularly transport high-density and high-volume materials such as iron ore. Therefore, the capacity of these 2 space bags is very large, far exceeding the 2 space bags originally owned by the rabbits. In this way, the rabbits can easily carry more goods with them. This time, the trade group does not have to use the lizard cart to tow various containers as it did in the past. Before coming, Shi's Erhong, who was in charge of Chixin City, also said that it would be better if there were more elite monsters like the Mo family. The sight returned to the edge of the woods. Hearing what Manning said, Yang Bali did not pay much attention at first. In his opinion, the monster materials that Manning mentioned should be similar to the first batch. It is mainly composed of monster materials that are not on the rank, plus a small amount of first-rank monsters and very few non-key parts of second-rank monsters. Although the price of this low-rank monster material has skyrocketed, the premise of profit is that the quantity is large enough. It takes more than a dozen cities to make a considerable profit, and the Teosu Chamber of Commerce alone is actually just like that. The rabbits were able to make a lot of money at the beginning, not by relying on the gains from the attack on the city alone. They first copied the bottom of the wave after arriving in Zhejiang City, and then made a profit from the price difference. With a small amount of goods in Qi County, Zabaoxun can only make a few thousand spirit stones after deducting the acquisition cost and freight cost. Therefore, Yang Bali casually pointed to a warehouse not far away and said, "Shopkeeper Ma, what do you think of that place?" Originally, Yang Bali asked casually, but to his surprise, Manning shook his head after taking a few glances. "Shopkeeper Yang, the quantity of goods this time is large, so please find another warehouse that is large enough." Yang Bali was stunned, and his expression gradually became serious. He was not a fool, so he naturally understood the subtext of Manning's words. Then he thought for a moment and said to Manning, "Shopkeeper Ma, please follow me." Then he led Manning and Wei Qiangsheng through many twists and turns, and finally came to a 3-story building. "Shopkeeper Yang, this is one of the largest warehouses in the mansion. A batch of goods was just shipped away a few days ago, so it is now vacant and unused. I think it should meet Shopkeeper Ma's requirements." Manning looked up and looked at the warehouse, and nodded with satisfaction. The area of this warehouse is close to the size of a playground, which does meet his requirements. Then the three of them entered the warehouse, and Manning handed Wei Qiangsheng the space bag and motioned him to open it. Wei Qiangsheng took the bag and input his divine thoughts. After a while, a large amount of monster materials were taken out of it, and soon covered most of the area. At first, Yang Boli's expression was normal. He just felt that the number of first-level monsters seemed to be much more than last time. But as more materials appeared, his expression gradually became solemn. A large amount of high-quality first-level materials. Then the ordinary area of the second-level monster. Then the core organs of the second-level monster. Wait until the end. When the remains of a huge stick insect were taken out, Yang Bali exclaimed, "Third-level initial monster, moth." Then he took a closer look at the pile of monster materials, and his eyes swept over several third-level monsters. A sudden enlightenment flashed through Yang Boli's mind. He turned his head suddenly and asked Manning, "Shopkeeper Ma, did you annihilate the beast tide of Xiaolianzi Mountain?" "Yes, a few months ago, the Chamber of Commerce dispatched a group of forces to annihilate the beast tide of Xiaolianzi Mountain." Manning nodded slightly reservedly, but immediately a sense of disobedience emerged in his heart. It was mentioned before. After annihilating the beast tide of Xiaolianzi Mountain, the rabbits had made a preparation. That is, Ziqiang City discovered that this matter was done by the Taosu Chamber of Commerce. Because the destruction caused by modern weapons is too special, and many traces cannot be erased. For Yang Bali, who has seen the power of the Happy Stick and the Type 56, it should not be difficult to make this judgment. All the rabbits can do is to clean up the traces of the vehicles to avoid being discovered by the nearest big city, Shanghai City. Therefore, the rabbits are also prepared for the possibility that Ziqiang City may send spies, and this has lasted for a long time. Before the departure of the second trade delegation, the rabbits' security check line did not relax the review of foreign population. But Yang Boli's meaning is very clear at the moment. He did not know that the Battle of Xiaolianzi Mountain was the work of the rabbits. At the same time, combined with the results of the recent review of foreign population, Yang Boli's words should not be lying. This is a bit strange. However, after a little surprise, Manning came back to his senses. In any case, this is a good thing for the rabbits. His main task this time is not to explore other situations, but simply to sell this batch of monster materials from the Battle of Xiaolianzi Mountain. The number of this batch of monster materials is about 4 times that of the siege beast tide, not to mention the value. The mouthparts and penis of the third-level stick insect or boar alone are worth more than half of the non-entry-level monsters in the siege. When the rabbits arrived in Ziqiang City, they first earned more than 30,000 spirit stones by selling disposable earth vein flames, and then used this part of the spirit stones as the starting capital to buy at the bottom. And they successfully snatched a small bite of meat from Zibeoksun in the east of the city, and finally made a profit of more than 50,000 spirit stones. Therefore, the goal set by the headquarters for Manning this time is very simple, 10 times. Note, I was really irritated by some comments. The day before yesterday, my original words were there may be another chapter in the early morning. I will try my best to code, but it's just possible. Later, I coded all night until 5 in the morning and posted 2 chapters in one go. You can go to check the update time. As a result, a comment said that Kidian video was getting more and more deductible, and finally directly dragged it to me, saying that I added a chapter in the evening but didn't update it, and asked if everyone saw it. I just said it without thinking that the plot is coherent and people will enjoy it. I stayed up all night to write, but some people said that I didn't update. To be honest, I have seen a lot of comments, some of which are water, some are directly scolded, or some are personal attacks from peers, but I have never seen anyone say that I have exceeded the update quota and then delayed the payment. In addition, this paragraph does not count. Chapter 333 Damn, I only earned a dozen times more. In the first Ziqiang market, the monster materials were basically priced directly by kilogram. Just like the local Maoke restaurants. Chicken gizzards, beef and duck intestines were all counted as meat dishes, while enoki mushrooms, lettuce, water radish and yam were all counted as vegetarian dishes. Basically, they were not priced separately. However, in this round of transactions, the previous package pricing method is not applicable. Because the monster materials this time are more precious, they must be calculated separately. Even the second-level monsters of the commander level during the siege war are not good enough in the beast tide of Xiaolianzi Mountain. Only the second-level late black wind snake that awakened a little pterosaur blood can be regarded as a high-quality material, and the others can only be regarded as slightly high-quality common goods. The wholesale price of ordinary monster materials was 4.3 spirit stones kilogram at the beginning. Now it is not difficult to increase tenfold after this batch of monster materials are sold separately. At this moment, Yang Bali is calculating and classifying the prices of various materials with several chief clerks of Zibaoxuan. The mouth parts of the boar are 5,000 spirit stones, and the genitals are 6,000 spirit stones. The tail of the second-level four-eyed spirit fox is of excellent quality, 70 spirit stones, and the fox pupils are 50 spirit stones. A pair of second-level ice falcon wings, slightly damaged, can be used to refine a second-level primary flying magic weapon, 40 spirit stones. A pair of first-level snow spirit sheep inner mouths, soft and moisturizing, can be made into puppet dolls and sold to single practitioners. They are lustful and stupid, so the price is 130 spirit stones. In the Battle of Xiaolianzi Mountain, the rabbits wiped out more than 34,700 monsters in total, except for the captured two-headed bull. Among them, about 20,000 monsters were taken away by Luo Ziote, a tool man, and the rest were taken back to the Xinhao camp by the rabbits. Excluding the key parts intercepted by the rabbits, there are also the bases reserved for emergency and the monsters captured alive. This time, Manning and others brought nearly 10,000 monster materials to sell. The number of materials is not small, and a large amount of materials requires energy to carefully identify. Therefore, the entire pricing process took nearly half a day to complete. A few hours later, Yang Bali found Manning with a thick stack of account books in his hand. Shopkeeper Ma, the prices are calculated. Manning put his hands in his sleeves and pretended to listen attentively. Shopkeeper Yang, just give a number. Yang Bali nodded and said, Shopkeeper Ma, I will give an average price. Your monster materials total more than 24,000 kilograms. Among them, the first-level monster materials are more than 15,300 kilograms. The average price after single-piece statistics and amortization is 11.4 spirit stones per kilogram, and the total price is 173,420.8 spirit stones. The second-level monster is more than 6,600 kilograms. It is still calculated and accumulated by single pieces first. The total price is 198,634.2 spirit stones, and the average price is 29.8 spirit stones per kilogram. The third-level monster is more than 2,200 kilograms, with a total price of 193,261.7 spirit stones, and an average price of 87.9 spirit stones per kilogram. The price of all the materials combined is 565,316.7 lingxi. I will directly make up to 570,000 lingxi for you. 570,000 lingxi. Manning's expression remained unchanged, but he nodded secretly in his heart. It has been mentioned before. The goal of the rabbits this time is to sell the monster materials for more than 10 times the previous price, which is 430,000 lingxi as a starting point. This price is naturally not a number that the rabbits came up with casually, but a quotation obtained by the headquarters after strict calculation. Of course, since the current demand for the demon is unknown, this price is not a real-time price in theory. To be honest, the price quoted by Yang Bali is quite different from the rabbit's expectations, 430,000 and 570,000, a difference of 32.5%. In e-commerce, it is the difference between a mobile phone sold for 3,000 yuan on one platform and 3,999 on another platform. It is basically a ladder model difference. This is obviously abnormal. The rabbits, or the Teosu Chamber of Commerce, currently have a very important position in Yang Bali's heart. There is no doubt about this. But as a businessman, in the face of a trade involving hundreds of thousands of spirit stones, Yang Bali would not pay for the purchase. Not to mention the processing and transportation costs in the future. If he loses money, he will not be able to explain to the board of directors composed of the elders of the clan. He may even be suspected of embezzlement. Therefore, Yang Bali's offer must be profitable. It is nothing more than a reduction from the original 40% to 50% to 20%. The rabbits have no objection to this. This is the truth. You can make money because you have the ability. As a supplier, we are satisfied if we can guarantee a profit of dozens of times. Yes, dozens of times. The cost of killing a monster with firepower in Xiaolianzi Mountain is 648 yuan, and more than 30,000 monsters is almost 20 million to 30 million. The bulk of the ammunition expenditure is the consumption of Ludun 2000. In fact, the rabbits have been very frugal in firing, but this thing is tens of millions for 1 minute. The base is there, and it can't save much. Counting other fuel vehicle damage, dispatching losses and talisman consumption, 200 million is about right. More than 500,000 spirit stones converted into Chinese currency is more than 3 billion. With this calculation, the profit is 15 times. Okay. Not dozens of times, bragging. In short, at this profit rate, let alone Yang Bali taking 20% or 30% of the profit, the rabbits will not have any objections if it doubles or triples. It's like writing online novels. You make hundreds of millions by writing a book, buy a car and a house, and have financial freedom, gain fame and profit. Later, you see that a writer earns 20,000 a month by writing your fanfiction, and basically you can't have jealous thoughts in your heart. The reason why I use the word basically here is because a certain writer really asked for income, which is an exception. But the reputation of that writer is not very good, so it can't be regarded as a typical example. Let's return to the original place. In other words, the quotation given by Yang Bali can illustrate a problem: monster materials have risen again. Or shopkeeper Yang, has the situation in Yaok deteriorated again? Hearing Man Ying's question, Yang Bali stroked his beard and nodded slightly. Yes. In the past few Damo days, the situation in Yaok has become increasingly tense. 2 Damo days ago, even a 4th-order late-stage demon king appeared outside the pass. And he fought with a certain strongest ancestor stationed in the Damo world. Man Ying thought for a while and asked, "So, the monsters in Yaok are still unable to refine materials?" Hearing this, Yang Bali couldn't help but show a trace of worry in his eyes and sighed lightly. Everything is self-evident. Although Zbaoksun is taking this opportunity to make a fortune from the war, the materials they should supply have not been reduced in the slightest. This is actually a very tangled state. As a businessman, it is instinctive to pursue profit. At the same time, in this case, the price increase of monster materials is also a general trend, which is not something that can be changed by human power. On the other hand, Yang Bali and others were worried about the breach of the Demon Palace, so they almost desperately transported the resources they should give to the front line. So they are different from some people at the beginning. They not only take money but also do the work, they don't drag their feet, and they don't pass off inferior products as good ones. After all, humans and demons cannot coexist. Once the Demon Palace is breached, it will undoubtedly be a world-destroying disaster for the humans in the Great Mo realm. To put it bluntly, if it really comes to a desperate situation, chambers of commerce such as Zbaoksun will even transport supplies to the front line for free. But before that, they are still eating a lot. Maybe this is the two-sided nature of human beings. Note, I just learned a temporary solution to the video gift currency. Go to Wandaojit to download the early version of Kidian, which has 10 coins. It works. In addition, I will try to come up with another chapter this morning. Please pay attention to the time. I really don't want to see comments saying that I have delayed the update, even though I have clearly updated it. Chapter 334, The Demon Palace You Must Visit. In the warehouse. Hearing Yang Boli's words, Man Ying's expression gradually became a little solemn. In terms of emotion, the humans in the Great Mo realm are no different from their appearance. If it is an internal dispute between humans, there is nothing to say. It is part of the process of civilization evolution. And the invasion of non-human foreign enemies, such as monsters, will naturally make people feel a sense of common hatred. Seeing a large number of similar lives passing away, it is not sad. To be honest, Man Ying and the rabbits are not so saintly. But the mood is still somewhat heavy. The country of Huaxia had experienced the misery of the people more than 80 years ago, so the rabbits really don't want to see this happen in the Great Mo realm. And in terms of reason, once the demon gate is breached, it will be extremely unfavorable for the development of the rabbits. What the rabbits have to do now is to work hard to advance the speed bar, and this kind of development requires time and a relatively stable external condition. Not to mention that once the Great Mo realm is breached, the mainland may also be affected to a certain extent. Therefore, it is not reasonable for the rabbits to see Yaok being breached too early. Then Man Ying thought of something and asked Yang Bali, "Shopkeeper Yang, I wonder if Zbaoksun can get the remains of the monsters in Yaok, After hearing Yang Bali talk about the incident of Yaok, the rabbits became interested in the remains of the monsters that Yang Bali mentioned that could not be extracted. As scientific researchers, Lin Li and others are still curious about what is so special about that mysterious energy. In fact, rabbits are a bit like cats. They like to explore everything they see. Hearing about Ma Ning's culture, Yang Bali was stunned at first, and it was obvious that he was a little surprised by this request. But he nodded soon and took out a space bag from his waist. This is not difficult. I have a few monster remains sent from Yaok. There are more than 100,000 or even hundreds of thousands of monsters participating in each battle in Yaok, and the remains left on the battlefield are countless. Many lucky people found monster crystals by chance when counting remote battlefields and hid them secretly. In exchange for enough spirit stones and resources, they finally became a strong man, Yang Bali said while inputting his divine thoughts and opened the space bag. A moment later, the remains of a monster appeared on the ground. This is a monster similar to vulture, with a wingspan of about 4 or 5 meters and black and white feathers. Yang Bali pointed at the monster and introduced it. This is the black-feathered falcon of Yaok, a very common monster. The one in front of us just entered the first level and died from a flying sword. Ma Ning carefully looked at the black-feathered falcon, and then looked at Yang Bali in confusion. Shopkeeper Yang, I remember you said that the monsters that had accidents in Yaok were all destroyed by mysterious energy after death, right? How come this black-feathered falcon is so well preserved? Yang Bali glanced at him and said, yes, I did say that. But Shopkeeper Ma, do you know that the so-called damage actually has two situations? One is from the outside to the inside, all parts are destroyed. The other is that the outside looks intact, but in fact, Yang Bali said as he waved his hand gently. Silently, a wind-type spell was cast. Due to Yang Bali's intentional control, the power of this spell was not strong. But as the breeze blew, the hair of the entire monster's remains actually scattered like ordinary dandelions without any roots. In just a few breaths, the remains of the black-feathered falcon in front of Ma Ning were only a mass of blood, flesh and organs that were condensed together and could not be seen, and a skeleton. And the moment he saw the skeleton, Ma Ning's pupils suddenly shrank. The size of this skeleton was no different from the appearance of the black-feathered falcon, but its color was black without any luster. Before leaving the Xinhao camp, Ma Ning had seen a black skeleton exactly like this one. That was the remains of Mo Pidong. In addition, the monster went crazy and attacked the demon gate. Isn't this the same as the effect of black spiritual energy? Could it be that the changes in the demon world are related to the black spiritual energy? Then Ma Ning took a deep breath and forced himself to calm down the shock in his heart. This may just be a wrong guess under his personal sensitivity. After all, there is no evidence to prove that the two skeletons are related. Because the color black is originally very monotonous, theoretically there is a certain coincidence of chance. After all, pure black and colorful black are not the same concept. Pure black can be seen everywhere in life. If you don't believe me, unbutton your pants, lower your head, and then sit on the toilet to look at the screen of your phone in sleep mode. That is standard black. Well, if you think wrongly, go to face the wall. Let's take a step back. Maybe the skeleton of the black-feathered falcon itself is black? Just like the black chicken. Is there too much melanin and isomelanin in the body, which leads to black bones? In order to rule out this possibility, Ma Ning turned to look at Yang Bali and asked, Shopkeeper Yang, was the skeleton of the black-feathered falcon originally black? Yang Bali looked at Ma Ning with some surprise and explained, of course not. The skeleton of the black-feathered falcon is a very standard white color. Coupled with its ugly appearance, it is regarded as a symbol of death and bad luck in many places and is extremely disgusting. In some areas of the Damo realm, the funeral custom is to wear a piece of white black-feathered falcon skeleton on the shoulder during the funeral. Why, there is no black-feathered falcon behind the Shanghai mountains? Ma Ning shook his head and said, I haven't seen this kind of beast very often. After all, the Shanghai mountains are vast. But I do know a bird called Mizutani falcon, which is probably about the same as the black-feathered falcon. Yang Bali nodded, not quite understanding. He really didn't know the situation behind the Shanghai mountains, but what Ma Ning said made sense. It is normal that some areas in the vast wilderness have not come into contact with black-feathered falcons. It's just a monster anyway. Some places in the Great Mo realm don't even know how to use toilet paper after going to the toilet. Then Ma Ning thought about it and asked tentatively, Shopkeeper Yang, I am a little interested in this mutant monster. I wonder if I can ask for a piece of skeleton to play with. If you want, shopkeeper Ma, take the whole remains. Yang Bali waved his hand generously. This skeleton was originally transported from the front line to increase persuasiveness, so he didn't feel bad about giving it away. After saying that, he added, by the way, shopkeeper Ma, this skeleton has a certain toxicity. This poison is not difficult for practitioners to resist, but if a mortal body touches it directly, it may be easy to get some trouble. So you have to pay more attention when playing with it, and don't hurt your body. Ma Ning was stunned when he heard this, and nodded politely. Strange. The skeleton of the black-feathered falcon is actually toxic? But he clearly remembered that Mo Pidong's skeleton was not poisonous. Could it be that he wanted to fork? In fact, the energy that caused the change of the demon beast in Yaok has little to do with the black spirit stone? Of course. The specific results need to be sent back to the camp and analyzed by technical means before a judgment can be made. But in any case, Yaok must send someone there. This place is too mysterious, and it is highly suspected to have a certain connection with the black spiritual energy. Thinking of this, Ma Ning couldn't help but ask, Manager Yang, may I ask when will your next trip to Yaok be? Note, updated in the early morning, at a speed of 700 per hour, even proofreading for 5 hours. The biological clock that had just been adjusted is messed up again, just to fulfill the promise, so please give me some monthly tickets, everyone. I have given up my work and rest schedule. Chapter 335 The Secret of the Demon Palace. When will you go to Yaok next time? In the warehouse. Yang Bali looked at Ma Ning thoughtfully and replied, Shopkeeper Ma, do you remember one thing? The teleportation array leading to Yaok must be authorized by Yaok before it can be opened. Ma Ning nodded slightly. This matter was related to Wu Fan. After Wu Fan disappeared, Ma Ning and Lin Ziming had learned about several teleportation points of Ziqiang City's teleportation array. In addition to the other 3 large cities of the same size in the southern region, the teleportation array is also connected to Yaok. However, unlike the other 3 cities, which can be teleported at will, Yaok's teleportation array is one-way authorized and cannot be used by outsiders without permission. Then Yang Bali said, in previous years, the frequency of opening the Yaok teleportation array was about once a year, at the end of the year. But now the situation in Yaok is tense, and the frequency of opening has increased a lot. Generally, it will be open once every 10 to 15 Damo days. The next array opening is scheduled to be 7 Damo days later, so your batch of monster materials is still delivered very timely. Then he paused, a gleam of light flashed in his eyes, and asked knowingly, why? Shopkeeper Ma is interested in Yaok. Ma Ning nodded very frankly. After all, he didn't hide it before. Yes, I am quite interested in Yaok, this important place. After all, there is no such wonder behind the Xianayu Mountains. Among the many tribes behind the mountains, it seems that not many people have ever been to Yaok. I wonder if it would be convenient for shopkeeper Yang to introduce the general situation of Yaok to me. The rabbits had collected a lot of information about Yaok before, but this information was strictly speaking biased. For example, how important the Demon Palace is. There are Yuanying Masters in the Demon Palace, there are ancient formations in the Demon Palace, and the number of demon beasts annihilated in a war will not be less than 100,000, etc. But other than that, the rabbits know nothing about the details of the Demon Palace. They don't even know whether the Demon Palace is square or round. So far, the only picture of the Demon Palace that the headquarters has come into contact with is the photo bead that Wei Siming took of the Yuanying swordsman. In the background of the photo bead, you can see a city wall over 300 meters high, and then nothing. It's roughly like a few riders chatting, talking about a great rider, and a newbie became interested. And other authors who know the inside story are also very respectful, and put on all kinds of high hats. What domestic Xianxia novels are the first, copyright tycoons, and wealth freedom by writing books, etc. It looks awesome, but it's hard to give people an intuitive understanding. But if you say that his average subscription is so many tens of thousands, the sales of physical books are so many copies, and the copyrights are sold for hundreds of millions, this will appear much more three-dimensional and more intuitive. If the former is the outline, the latter part is the body. At present, the rabbits have already understood the outline of Yaok, so they naturally have further demands. For example, how many practitioners are there in Yaok now, and what is the layout of Yaok, etc. Facing Ma Ning's curiosity, Yang Bali lowered his head and pondered for a few seconds. To be honest, The layout of Yaok is not a particularly important secret. Because many important places are guarded by powerful formations, even if they know that a certain place is a core place, outsiders have no means to enter. Of course, the words not particularly important are also relative, and are related to the level of contact. Many low-level practitioners in the Jinden realm of the Great Mo realm may not be able to know this kind of information. After careful consideration, Yang Bali finally decided to give some information to Moning, shopkeeper Ma. If you have any news you want to ask and I happen to know it, I will definitely tell you everything I know. Hearing this, Moning's face suddenly showed a trace of visible joy. Then he coughed lightly and asked an extremely important question, Shopkeeper Yang, where exactly is the location of the Demon Palace? Then he thought for a moment and added, I know that the Demon Palace is at the far end of the western region, but does this far end have a certain limit? For example, how far is it from Zhejiang City or the southern region? And is there any other way to get there besides the teleportation array? A long time ago, when the rabbits had just obtained intelligence on the Great Mo realm, they had a relatively rough understanding of the structure of the Great Mo realm. The Great Mo realm is divided into 4 major regions, namely the southeast, northwest, and northeast. Among them, the southern region is where Chixin City and Zhejiang City are located. Among the 3 regions of the southeast, northwest, and northeast, the eastern region has the largest area, the southern region is the second largest, and the northern region is the smallest. Therefore, these 3 regions are collectively called the central region. There is a dangerous place outside each major region. The southern region is the Shanghai Mountains, the northern region is the endless sand forest, and the eastern region is the Star Sea. The location of the Demon Palace is at the far end of the western region, and the only way to travel to the other 3 regions is to rely on the teleportation array. But that's what I said. Experts in the camp had discussed another possibility. Is it possible that the Yaok and the central domain are actually accessible, but the distance is too far for human power to reach, so they have to use the teleportation array for transfer? This speculation also has a theoretical basis. The Yaok was built after the collision of the 2 worlds, which means that the original collision area was part of the Damo world. In addition, if the 2 sides are not directly related, the practitioners of the Damo world don't have to worry about the monsters breaking through the Yaok and attacking the Damo world. It's impossible for monsters to use teleportation arrays, right? There is indeed a possibility that high-level monsters are familiar with teleportation arrays, but it is not universal. And if it can be confirmed that the Yaok and the central domain are directly related, the practitioners cannot cross the physical body due to the problem of spiritual power, but the rabbit's vehicles may create miracles. Maybe it is more troublesome to operate, but this problem is not a big deal in front of the country. Opening up wasteland and opening up maps, this kind of thing is old familiar to us. Facing Monying's questions, Yang Bali pondered for a few seconds and explained, Shopkeeper Ma, you have just come from the Shanghai Mountains, so you may not understand some things. In fact, there were not 3 dangerous places in the Damo realm, but 4. Monying was stunned when he heard this. But he soon reacted and said in surprise, you mean there was also a dangerous place in the western region? And it was destroyed in the collision. Yang Bali nodded gently, his eyes showing reminiscence. That was 6 or 7,000 years ago, and it can be regarded as a secret. At that time, the western region was still an extremely prosperous cultivation area, and it was glorious. There were countless strong people, and there were also many Yuanying ancestors. Although the strength of the western region is not as good as that of the eastern region, it is stronger than the southern and northern regions. The dangerous place in the western region is called the Burial Spirit Plateau, which contains a large number of mysterious formations left over from ancient times. Ordinary cultivators will die if they enter it, and only Yuanying cultivators have a small chance of escaping. But there are living creatures in the Burial Spirit Plateau. According to historical records, there is a remnant clan of unknown origin living there. Remnant clan? Yes, it's called the Remnant Clan. Yang Bali exhaled a long breath and continued, that Remnant Clan claimed to be passed down from the most ancient times of the Damo realm. They rarely communicate with the outside world and are extremely mysterious. However, it is amazing or terrifying that the entire population of the survivors is only more than 10,000 people, but there are more than 40 Yuanying realm cultivators. You know, although the spiritual energy was relatively abundant thousands of years ago, the Yuanying realm was not common. A large domain, including the hidden ancestors, could only have 80 or 90 Yuanying cultivators. and the number of Yuanying in a tribe of 10,000 people can be comparable to that of half an ordinary domain. How amazing is this? Yang Bali, as a man of great knowledge, is still a little shocked when he mentions the survivors. He once verified this rumor when he was young, and the result he got was exactly the same as the record. And beside him, at this moment, Manying's mood was also fluctuating violently. A tribe of 10,000 people actually has more than 40 Yuanying? What is this concept? Even if the concentration of spiritual energy was relatively high at that time, it is hard to imagine. It can even be said that it is an impossible ratio. Even if you think about it from another perspective, with the current ability of the rabbits, I am afraid that they are far from reaching this ratio. Then he thought of something. Then he asked Yang Bali, "So, Manager Yang, what happened next?" Note, there will be another chapter later, maybe very late. By the way, has anyone tried the devilment candy? I kind of want to buy a pack to try. Chapter 336, The Secret of Demon Palace. Later, of course, the big collision happened, in the warehouse. Yang Bali's eyes were a little dazed. He sighed and introduced in detail, "It's a coincidence. On that day, an ancestor of our clan practiced in the western regions and became an eyewitness of the collision between the two worlds. According to notes he left behind, there was nothing unusual in the western regions on the day of the collision. Everything was calm. The ancestor was even going to go to the brothel, the tea house, to drink a few cups of tea. Until a quarter of an hour, a dazzling white light came from a very far distance. Then, an earthquake accompanied by burning heat came, and in an instant, the sky and the earth turned upside down, as if the end of the world had come." Hearing this, Manying couldn't help but glance at the other party. He noticed the title of the person in Yang Bali's mouth, Ancestor. If what Yang Bali said is true, doesn't it mean that the Yang family has been passed down for 6,000 or 7,000 years? Is it really possible for a family to be passed down for so long? Yang Bali seemed to see Manying's doubts, and stroked his beard a little awkwardly. Of course. The author said that he was the ancestor of our clan, but in fact he did not really establish a clan or a city. He liked to travel around and left many blood descendants, and the Yang family was just one of them. The real founder of the Yang family in Zhejiang City is only more than 1,000 years old, but the descendants have slightly modified the image of the ancestor. But I dare to guarantee that the author really exists, and the things recorded are indeed true. Manying understood and nodded secretly. I said it. If a family really has been passed down for 6,000 or 7,000 years and has endless luck, it will definitely be a top overlord even in the Great Mo realm. Although Zhejiang City is strong, from the perspective of the Great Mo realm, it is still different from the word overlord. For example, in the previous Zhejiang market trade, Tingayan Pavilion from another city in the southern region can faintly suppress Zibaoxuan. At that time, Tingayan Pavilion found that it had entered the game, so it forced a stop-loss price. They bought the monster materials at a low price everywhere, and snatched a bite of the meat of Zhejiang City. But the Yang family had nothing to say. Although they still made a profit in the end, it was far from the actual profit they could make. If that person was just an ancient ancestor, it would make sense. Just like everyone in the local area is a descendant of Yan and Wang. Ancestors or distant ancestors are all similar to a symbolic concept. For example, we can also say that my ancestors had an ancestor named Huangdi, who beat up the enemy riding a rolling horse. It's just that the Great Mo realm has always had extraordinary power since ancient times, so it has a strong ability to resist risks. This has led to many ancient figures in the Great Mo realm being able to leave behind some inheritance or records, rather than myths and legends. Just like the notes mentioned by Yang Bali. Then Yang Bali continued, at that time, the ancestor was practicing in a border city in the western regions, and his cultivation was not weak, so he was lucky enough to survive the collision. But the cities and families in other central and western regions of the western regions were not so lucky, and genocide was the norm. Not to mention that only 1 out of 10 survived, it was impossible to do so. There are many people in the nascent soul and even the god transformation stage. Manying listened quietly, and although his expression was still heavy, he was not surprised. According to the information the rabbits have, the last time the god transformation stage appeared was more than 3,000 years ago, that is, 3,000 or 4,000 years after the collision of the two worlds. The two have a history of more than 20 years. Therefore, It is not surprising that there were practitioners in the god transformation stage in the Dhamma world when the two worlds collided. By the same token, it can be inferred that there should have been fifth level or even higher monsters in the demon world at that time. As for the fall of the god transformation stage, it is even more normal. After all, it was a collision between two worlds. The ordinary Xian temple world can cut off Changji's dog head with one knife, not to mention the real world that breeds living beings. Even if it was just a small bump on the corner, the energy that erupted was definitely not something that Yuanying and Huishan could stop. According to the rabbit's previous analysis, Yuanying beginners can be compared to fourth-generation fighters, which is the final form of modern weapons. And Huishan practitioners can almost resist nuclear bombs in the edge area, and have the possibility of encoding their own genes to a certain extent. But no matter how you encode, even if Kevin Nitmec is possessed, you can't encode yourself into a humanoid self-propelled void shield or black hole. At most, it is an advanced version of Orochimaru's experiment, that is, optimizing some representation states. Therefore, unless the protagonist's halo is possessed, it is impossible for Huishan to survive the direct collision of the world. And at this point, Moning could almost guess the development trend of the next incident. Shopkeeper Yang, did monsters or beast tides begin to attack the Great Mo realm after the collision? Yang Bali nodded with a heavy face. The explosion of the collision destroyed about 3/4 of the territory of the western region, and the remaining parts were also damaged to varying degrees. The practitioners who survived had just reacted and started to save themselves when the beast tide appeared. Obviously, the reaction of the monster world was much faster than ours. Tens of millions or even hundreds of millions of monsters appeared from the gap and swept from the western region to the central region. As he spoke, Yang Bali sighed again. Just like the descendants of the natives would sigh about the historical nodes of the five barbarians' invasion of China and the Qing troops' entry into the pass. As a latecomer, Yang Bali also felt heavy about that period of history. Then he adjusted his mind and continued, that was the most dangerous period in the Great Mo realm since the destruction of the ancient times. In just a few years, a large number of nascent souls and even god-transforming great cultivators perished. As for ordinary practitioners and mortals, let alone, the entire Great Mo realm was devastated, even more miserable than the chaotic world today. Shopkeeper Ma, you can probably imagine the despair of hundreds of thousands of people running thousands of miles to escape to a distant city. After crossing a mountain, they saw countless monsters gnawing at the remains of the city ruins. Fortunately, the remaining god-transforming ancestors in the Great Mo realm were decisive enough at that time. At the cost of the lives of 2 god-transforming ancestors and several nascent soul great cultivators, they temporarily blocked the entrance to the monster realm. Then they organized all parties to launch a counterattack, and when the monsters had no backup, they snatched back 4 large domains. Later, the god-transforming ancestors used the formations left over from the ancient times, and at the same time, with the help of some alien cultivators from the back of the Xianyu Mountains, they established a monster palace. At the same time, because the western region was hit by the 2 realms, the soil was shaken into great powder, and it was impossible for living things to stand. Therefore, those great powers set up a super long formation to separate the intersection zone at the junction of the western region and the central region. Although this formation is not as strong as the Demon Palace, but it can also provide short-term defense in times of crisis, slightly delaying the time for the monsters to attack the central region. It is the last line of defense for the entire Dhamma realm. At the same time, the formation also blocked the possibility of anyone entering the western region, so everyone who wanted to go to the Demon Palace could only use the teleportation route. Even the Yuanying Great Cultivator is no exception. I see. Moning touched his chin as if he had realized something. It turned out that the cause and effect of the Demon Palace was like this. Since the western region is blocked by the formation, it is probably difficult for the rabbits to go to the Demon Palace by means of vehicles. After all, this is the last line of defense of the Dhamma realm. You can't just poke a hole in the formation for your curiosity, right? Otherwise, what's the difference between this and piercing a needle hole in a condom? Then Moning thought of something and asked Yang Bali, Shopkeeper Yang, what about the survivors? In the face of such a disaster, can the survivors stay out of it? Yang Bali suddenly blinked. What? Didn't I say that just now? What did you say? The place where the 2 worlds collided was the core ancestral land of the survivors on the Burial Spirit Plateau. Tens of thousands of members of the survivors, together with more than 40 nascent souls and 2 god transformation ancestors, all died on the spot, and their bodies were not found. Ma Ning's eyes widened immediately. How could this be? Doesn't that mean Yaok? Yang Bali nodded slowly, and continued with the second half of the sentence. Yes, Yaok was built on the ancestral land of the survivors. Note, the third update is presented. There may be more in the early morning. I will try my best to code it. Chapter 337 The Secret of the Demon Palace. I have to say, Yang Bali's words are still very impactful. A race that claims to be inherited from the most ancient times and is obviously abnormal all over. It turned out that Fei Qiu died in the collision of 2 worlds? This is really too weird. Ma Ning didn't know how big the territory of the western region was, but he could use the southern region as a reference for comparison. According to the information collected by the rabbits before, the entire southern region is an irregular polygon with a north-south limit span of 9,000 kilometers and an east-west limit span of 12,000 kilometers. The overall area is about 30 million square kilometers, which is more than 3 times that of China. This is a concept that has been mentioned repeatedly before. Damoji is a world, not a country. So it should not be benchmarked against China, but the Earth. Students who have studied geography should more or less remember a concept. The surface area of the Earth is 510 million square kilometers, the land area is 149 million square kilometers, and the rest is ocean. In addition, as mentioned earlier, the planetary specifications of Damoji are very special, so the area of more than 30 million square kilometers in the southern region is actually very normal. If we have to find a comparison, the south region should be compared to Asia. It is only because the vehicles in the Great Mo realm are not well developed and the communication between cities is not confidential that the whole world seems a bit primitive. Of course, the value of more than 30 million may be slightly different from the actual value. After all, the rabbit's own satellite has not been launched into space. This value is a rough data calculated through channels, based on the thumbnail of the south region provided mainly by Zhejiang City. This map is somewhat similar to the small map of Ghost Valley and 8 Wastelands. Just like some fanatics calculated the area of Yongning Prefecture by the difference method. The rabbits also used a similar corresponding principle and made a difference calculation by a more accurate supercomputer. But even if this value is different due to the accuracy of the map, the range of 30 million will at least not change much. At least it has no effect in terms of simple reference and comparison. According to the information the rabbits have learned before, the area of the western region is larger than that of the southern region, so let's calculate it as 40 million square kilometers. Although Ma Ning didn't know the overall area of the survivors' land, according to the more than 300-meter-long wall recorded by Wei Siming's photo beat 100 years ago, the Yaok was only about 2,000 to 3,000 square kilometers, at most 50 kilometers long and wide, which was enough for the status of the Yaok. What does it mean to hit the survivors' land in the Zhangling Plateau in the western regions? It is known that the area of Asia is 44 million square kilometers, which is about the same size as the western regions. This is equivalent to locking Asia on a standard globe, and then blindfolding you and poking it with a toothpick, and it just happens to poke Abu Dhabi. Let's give another intuitive example. This is like a place as big as the Magic City, and a beam of light suddenly appeared one night, and then it happened to fall into a milk tea shop. The probability of this is terribly low, not to mention the very special area of the survivors' ancestral land. Therefore, after understanding the relevant situation, Ma Ning subconsciously had a guess in his heart: will the collision between the 2 worlds be related to the survivors? Although in theory, not to mention 2 people in the God transformation stage, even 20,000 people in the God transformation stage cannot make 2 worlds collide. It has been mentioned before. The maximum power of a God transformation stage instantaneous explosion can be regarded as the explosion of an ordinary nuclear bomb. No matter how many times 20,000 people in the God transformation stage can explode, the instantaneous upper limit is the explosion of 20,000 nuclear bombs. This number of nuclear bombs will explode, which is more than enough to exterminate mankind thousands or tens of thousands of times. But for the Earth itself, this is not enough. It's probably just like squeezing a pimple, with a little blood and pus, and a scar in 2 hours. The earthquake in the Indian Ocean in 2004 was equivalent to releasing 90 billion tons of TNT. This is 9 times the total amount of nuclear power in the human race at that time, which is equivalent to the effect of 30,000 nuclear bombs exploding. Do you see what happened to the Earth? By the way, A concept is popularized: if you want to blow up the Earth and the debris flies out of orbit, you need 5.910 cap 31 J of energy. Another algorithm calculates 4.07. I use the first algorithm, which is a density of 5.5. The calculation process is free of charge. The energy of a large nuclear bomb is 3.810 cap 16 J. That is to say, we need 155000000000000000000, which is 155 trillion. The Earth is like this, and the Great Mo realm is actually similar. Even 20,000 immortal cultivators in the God transformation realm are like this, not to mention the two in the God transformation realm. Let me explain here again. It is not that the God transformation realm is too weak, but that destroying the world and destroying the planet are two different concepts. But the problem is that the origin of the survivors seems to be a little special. Although it is unknown whether what they said was inherited from the most ancient times. But the proportion of them born in the nascent soul realm is abnormal, which is an undeniable fact. And according to the many discoveries made by the rabbits before, the Great Mo realm was very long ago, not in the ancient times of 20,000 or 30,000 years ago, but in a period earlier. It is highly suspected that a very strong civilization was developed. If that civilization can really use vacuum zero-point energy, then they left behind a fully functional device the size of even a tiny bit of dandruff. It is not impossible to slightly change the rules of the world. Thinking of this, Manning had more ideas about Yeok. Then he continued to ask, Manager Yang, since the location of Yeok is on the land of the survivors, what is the layout of Yeok? Yang Bali thought about it and did not speak. Instead, he took Manning to a sandy area outside the warehouse. Then he cast a Taoist spell. Soon, the sand on the ground gradually gathered into a half-person high model. The main body of the model is a four-prism that is similar to a trapezoid in top view. The length of the upper base is about twice that of the side, and the lower base does not exist, because the original position of the lower base should be connected to a mountain. Students who do not understand this image can take two pieces of cardboard of equal size, fold them in half along the center line one by one, and then stretch each piece to about 120 degrees angle and splice them together. If students do not even have cardboard, they can search online for Kun Kun's hairstyle when he danced Genie Tai Mei. It looks almost like that. There is a black hole opposite the model, and you can see a monster made of a large amount of sand attacking the model. Looking at the model, Manning was thoughtful. So this is Yeok? It's actually a trapezoidal wall guarding a mountain. Yang Bali blinked. Trapezoidal? What does that mean? Manning realized that he had slipped up, but he quickly covered up this detail with cultural differences. Oh, that's a saying behind the Cheyenne Mountains. What I mean is that Yeok is actually a wall guarding the mountain behind it. Armor. Yang Bali nodded. If you understand it this way, it's actually not wrong. The mountain behind Yeok is the ancestral holy mountain of the survivors, and behind the holy mountain is the western region. Now the holy mountain has been hollowed out and transformed into the core of Yeok by a powerful person, and the ancient formation is also among them. If you have the opportunity to go to Yeok in the future, you will know that the inside of the mountain is almost the same as a big city. The main defense of Yeok is the three external walls, which have been reinforced with special formations and can defend against attacks below the initial stage of the fourth level. Once the demon gate is breached, the beast tide will be able to break through the holy mountain and descend on the western regions. Manning thought for a while and asked again, Manager Yang, I wonder how long and wide these three walls are. Note, please give me some monthly tickets. It's been 2 days since I updated. Assuming that the asteroid belt after the explosion is 5,000 times the diameter of the Earth, that is, R1 equals 5,000 R0, then the potential energy change of M is, E equals E1 E0 equals GMM R1 plus GGMSM R0 equals GMM1 slash R01 slash R1, equals 4,999 GMM 5,000 R0. The increase in potential energy is 4,999 5,000 equals 0.9998 times the original potential energy, which is approximately equal to 1. For a uniform sphere, the kinetic binding energy is U equals 3 gm25r, but the density inside and outside the Earth is very different. Outer layer density equals 2.7 gcm3, innermost density pinner equals 13.09 gcm3. Greek letter rho equals pinner outer, RDM equals 4.2, pinner rop, Dr. Total mass of the Earth, M equals 44.2, pinner RP, dr equals 4 pinner 2 3.0 substitute or equals, pinner powder, R, density equals inner slash 4 plus 3 outer slash 4 equals 5.5 GCM2 differentiation, D equals GM, DMR substitute the above formulas for M and DM, and we get, U equals 4GN2R, 4 pinner 3 7 pinner APR slash 3 plus R2 page 2, Dr. Finally U equals 3 slash 5 7 inner 8P plus 9 page 2 112P, GM2 slash RU equals 2.257 x 10 cap 31J. The energy released by 1 kilogram of deuterium-tritium fusion is approximately 3.37 x 10 cap 14J. Substituting this into the calculation, we get 5.9 x 10 cap 31J. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 338, The Population of Damo Realm. The length and width of the Yaok City wall, outside the warehouse. Yang Bali looked at the floating sand model in front of him, and gestured with his hands while saying, if I remember correctly. The length of the walls on both sides of the Yaok is about 7 or 8 miles, and the middle section is about 20 miles. As for the width, it is hard to say. After all, it is a fortification built around the mountain. Some areas are narrow, only 100 meters. Some areas are extremely wide, even more than 2 miles. In other words, the circumference is about 35 kilometers or more. Manning calculated the data in his mind, and a shocking look appeared on his face. Although he had already prepared for the pattern of the Yaok in his heart. But when he really heard the scale of the Yaok City wall, Manning's heart still skipped a beat. Let's not talk about which is stronger, the Great Mo realm or the local area, but one thing is certain, that is, the basic productivity level of the Great Mo realm is definitely not as good as the local area, especially in terms of engineering level. If the construction facilities of the Great Mo realm want to achieve the same effect as the local area, the labor cost paid is at least 4 or 5 times higher. And this multiple will increase with the increase of construction difficulty, and finally expand to an extremely exaggerated value. There is nothing to explain in depth about this. It is related to the social form, not to the cultivation and combat power. Generally speaking, a complete set of tower crane equipment can match the construction efficiency of 10 foundation building practitioners. Even in the local area, if you want to build a wall with a side circumference of 7 or 8 miles, a circumference of the upper and lower sides of 20 miles, and a height of more than 300 meters, it is definitely not an easy task. The Three Gorges Dam is only 2 kilometers long and 185 meters high. Of course, the construction difficulty of a hydraulic dam cannot be directly compared with that of a ground building, but it can be used as a reference to a certain extent. After all, in terms of form, the dam is already the closest type of facility to a city wall in the local area. In other words, the price paid by the practitioners of the Great Mo realm to build such a large fortress is probably inestimable. In addition to the various formations in it, the amount of work and the cost are huge. It is possible that this fortress will invest several years or even decades of production income in the entire Great Mo realm. However, this kind of investment is necessary and rewarding. After all, it is the most important life and death defense line of a civilization. Unlike some people who have occupied other people's homes for 20 years and spent $3 trillion, leaving behind only devastation when they leave. Then Manning thought about it and asked the last question, Shopkeeper Yang, may I ask how many practitioners are stationed in the Demon Palace now? Yang Bali heard this and there was a hint of hesitation on his face. It's not that he was unwilling to share the relevant information with Manning, but he himself didn't really know much about this aspect of intelligence. The total number of practitioners is something that only Yaok knows, so I can only give a vague judgment. If all the practitioners of various realms are included, it should not be less than hundreds of thousands. After all, the 3 central regions are vast, and the conscription order requires 3 to 1 in each city. Adding various scattered individuals and groups, there must be 200,000 or 300,000 practitioners. As for high-level practitioners, I really don't know. Anyway, I heard that some time ago, several Yuanying masters who were exploring ruins in the Star Sea rushed back to Yaok overnight to strengthen defense after receiving the message. Therefore, The number of Yuanying realm practitioners in Yaok should not be less than 20. The conscription order mentioned by Yang Bali had been mentioned several times before. This is a kind of mandatory order issued by Yaok to each city with foundation establishment realm practitioners. Whenever there are more than 3 foundation establishment realm practitioners in a city, one must be sent to Yaok to serve. The specific personnel screening is the sole responsibility of the designated cities in the area. For example, the Mo family, which was brought justice by the rabbits, has a foundation building cultivator stationed in Yaok. As for the reason why Chi County City has 3 foundation building cultivators who do not have to serve in the military, it is because Wei Siming had made meritorious contributions in Yaok, which earned Chi County City 100 years of exemption from recruitment. However, this kind of exemption is extremely rare, so most cities that meet the conditions must send people to serve. In addition, Yang Boli's words also revealed another piece of information. His estimate is inseparable from 2 points. One is Yang Boli's personal experience in Yaok, and the other is the number of cities in the Great Mo realm that he knows. The latter is actually the key that Moning really cares about. After all, the rabbits currently have no other channels to count the cities in the Great Mo realm. The cultivators in Yaok are mainly composed of 2 categories. One is the cultivators who serve. The other is individuals or groups like Wei Siming who are close to the foundation building realm at the beginning, who have no obligation to serve but want to participate in the war. The former is divided into individuals from small cities and local forces from large cities. This is not difficult to understand. The 3-in-1 policy is aimed at ordinary cities with little high-end combat power. The more powerful the city, the more responsibilities it needs to bear. This is somewhat similar to local personal income tax. The higher the income, the more it pays. It's just that the Great Mo realm has no means of tax avoidance. For example, Zhejiang City. The Yang family alone has more than 40 foundation building realms stationed in Yaok all year round. The number of foundation building realms stationed in Yaok by the other many families combined is close to 200. This is still because the strength of the southern region is not strong. For example, in some large cities in the eastern region, there are many cities where the number of foundation building realms serving in various families exceeds 500. Excluding this part of the personnel, the number of practitioners who really come to Yaok according to the 3-in-1 policy should be around 100,000. The ratio of cities that meet the 3-in-1 policy to ordinary cities is about 1 to 4. After all, in most cases in the Great Mo realm, the requirement for building a city is to have a foundation building realm. At the beginning, Wei Siming and his people built a city at the 8th level of key training, which was an exception and had almost no universality. In other words, the total number of cities in the 3 central regions is likely to be around 400,000. According to the proportion of distribution, the number of cities in one domain is about 100,000. Don't think this number is outrageous. According to the Huaxia Statistical Yearbook 2020, as of the end of 2019, there were 44,821 township-level divisions in Huaxia. This number includes 8,393 street units, and the number of townships in towns after deduction is more than 36,000. The average distance between townships is 22.8 kilometers. The land area of Huaxia is 21.6% of the area of Asia. Assuming that one day the rabbits take the entire map of Asia into their pockets, the number of township divisions that can be divided in Asia theoretically is about 180,000. Even if some mountain systems are deducted, the number of township divisions that can exceed 200,000 is also very loose. As mentioned before, the southern domain is benchmarked against Asia, and the area is not much different. Therefore, it is completely reasonable to distribute 100,000 cities on it, with an average distance of 100 miles, or 50 kilometers. The other East and North Islands are mostly similar. Looking at these 400,000 cities, some are large and some are small, and the situation is very complicated. But in general, the population of a city in the Great Mo realm fluctuates between 6,000 and 20,000. For example, before the siege, there were 3 people in the Chi County City, and the total population, including refugees, was only more than 14,000. According to the average population of 15,000 per city, the total population of the 3 central regions should be around 6 billion. Of course, this is a very vague calculation. In today's chaotic world, this number is likely to be very different from the actual situation. In short, at this point, Moning has gained a lot. If the rabbits knew only the outline of the demon palace before, this time Manying's conversation can be regarded as entering, no, seeing the body of the demon palace. In addition, he also roughly understood the total number of cities and populations in the Great Mo realm. Although the latter may not be accurate, at present, when satellites cannot go up to the sky, this is already a very important source of intelligence. Then he organized his words and asked, Manager Yang, I wonder if you can give me a few places the next time you go to Yeok. Note, I have updated 3 times in a row for 3 consecutive days, monthly tickets Let me say here that I woke up at around 5 o'clock yesterday afternoon and have been coding until now. I was going to update 4 times today, but it seems that I can't hold on. Staying up late is too irritating. So I will update 3 times today, and then I will play games and force myself to stay up until 4 o'clock. I really don't have the energy to code, and then go to bed. As long as I can sleep until after 3 o'clock tomorrow morning, it will be considered a success, and then slowly adjust my biological clock. So I will update these 3 chapters today and continue tomorrow. Chapter 339 Rejected Request. Shopkeeper Yang, I wonder if you can give me a few places next time you go to Yeok. Outside the warehouse, Yang Bali was slightly stunned when he heard Manying's words, and asked in surprise, why? Shopkeeper Ma, do you want to go to Yeok? Although Yeok is an extremely mysterious defense fortress and an important border area, to be honest, it is not a good place to satisfy curiosity. It was not so bad in the early years. At that time, the Great Mo realm and the Demon realm could barely be called a confrontation, and there was often peace and stability for 3 to 5 years. Sometimes, the Great Mo realm even took the initiative to send a team to hunt monsters. But the situation is different now. Basically, there will be a small battle every 2 Great Mo days, and a war of a larger scale will break out in dozens of Great Mo days. Even in the smallest local offensive and defensive battles, the number of beast tides and the number of participants are several times more than that of Chixin City. As far as Yang Bali knows, in the past year, the casualty rate of foundation building cultivators has almost increased 5 or 6 times compared with previous years. If the defenders of Yeok had not had a special battle formation, the casualty rate would have almost certainly increased by more than 10 times. Therefore, he did not expect Manying to ask to go to the Great Mo realm. It can't be said that he was going to die. But at least it was a more curious idea. It's just like when other people go to big factories or ordinary companies for internships these days. You go to West Asia to join in the fun, and then ask Ada for an internship certificate. Looking at Yang Bali with a strange expression, Manying seemed to realize that his request was a bit abrupt, so he quickly made a patch. Shopkeeper Yang, I won't hide it from you. I want to send someone to Yeok to take a look. First of all, I am really curious and want to see the big scene. Secondly, if I can observe the battle situation of Yeok with my own eyes, I can further coordinate the production of happy bars with the clan. Yang Boli's face showed a trace of realization. The clan background of Tao's Hu Chamber of Commerce. When he went to Tae building to eat stinky tofu during this period, he also heard some introductions from Gu Junming, the shopkeeper. I know that it is a relatively closed tribe behind the Xianyu Mountains. During this period, due to the abnormal changes in the channel to the demon world, it has gradually started to contact the outside world. According to Gu Junming's introduction, the Fengling Yuang tribe to which the Tao's Hu Chamber of Commerce belongs has many businesses, and even involves cosmetic surgery such as face pinching. Among them, the happy stick is a primitive talisman that requires a lot of manpower for mass production, and it is a bit unconventional like Gushu. Therefore, not all the productivity of the entire tribe is placed on the refining of happy sticks. If his guess is correct, Manying should be preparing to use the photo beads to shoot some war scenes of the Demon Palace, so as to persuade the big figures in the tribe to further increase the production of happy sticks. How to say it? In a sense, Yang Boli's imagination is actually very close to the truth. It's just that the style of the truth is a little different from what he thought. After thinking about these, Yang Bali no longer focused on the reason why Manying wanted to go to the Demon Palace. After all, as the person in charge of the Tao's Hu Chamber of Commerce, Manying must want to sell more supplies for performance. Then Yang Bali smiled bitterly and said with some annoyance, Shopkeeper Ma, your request is indeed a bit difficult to handle. You may not know that Yeok has very strict requirements for the accompanying personnel for each material transportation. For example, this time, Yeok only gave Zikyong City a quota of 8. and these 8 quotas were divided among all parties. Basically, his words were not asking for extra benefits for himself, but the fact was so. As he said, Yaok has very strict control over outsiders, even practitioners below the Jinden realm. Although Zabeoksun or Zikyong City is the hegemon of the southern region. But in Yaok, where Yuanying masters gather, to be honest, it is just like that. Not to mention covering the sky with one hand, many slightly overstepping demands have to look at the faces of those Yuanying ancestors. This time, Yaok only gave Zikyong City 8 passages, not one more. Although Yang Bali is the patriarch of the Yang family, Yang Wanli's Huo Dao Dao. But let alone him, even Yang Wanli needs to consider the emotions of all parties when allocating quotas. With a huge Yang family sharing the burden, there really aren't many places that can be vacated. After all, the immortal world of Damo realm has nothing else but immortal elders. For example, the grandson of a certain elder is fighting in Yaok, and the grandson's mother wants to take this opportunity to see the child. With such a request, how can you ask Yang Bali to refuse? People also have reasons to say, my grandson is fighting on the front line, so what if the child's mother wants to take the opportunity to see him? However, considering the current importance of Teosu Chamber of Commerce, Yang Bali did not completely reject Ma Ning's request. Shopkeeper Ma, how do you think about this? Anyway, you will stay in Zikyong City for a while. I will find a chance to discuss it with my brother, and if possible, we will discuss it in detail. Ma Ning also happened to go back to hand over the matter to the headquarters. Although he had recording and video equipment on him this time, he did not bring ear monitors out of respect for Yang Bali. After all, Yang Bali now understands the role of ear monitors, and it is not appropriate to wear them with him. That is to say, the headquarters can understand the current situation in real time, but he cannot accept the headquarters' opinions. Anyway, it's just like Yang Bali said. The trade group will stay in Zikyong City for a while, maybe there is something that can be done? So he went with the flow and said, then I'll trouble shopkeeper Yang, so the two said goodbye. Yang Bali continued to count the monster materials, and Ma Ning went back to contact the headquarters. During the call, Lin Li, as the person in charge of the Xinhao camp, highly affirmed and praised Ma Ning's approach, and promised that the think tank will formulate a detailed and appropriate plan before the trade group leaves Zikyong City, and strive to get as many accompanying quotas as possible. During this period, Ma Ning's task is to serve as a bridge for the trade group to communicate with Zikyong City, and the rest just need to wait for instructions. Most of the Great Mo days passed in a flash. During this nearly 4 Chinese days, the trade group and the Yang family's transactions were also handed over in an orderly manner. For example, Zabeoksun has already delivered the spiritual stone payment for the previous batch of goods, and the payment is settled in cash, without any disgusting operations such as holding back the final payment. Friends who have done business should know that it is so damn rare and perfect that the upper party does not advance money or hold back the final payment. These 570,000 spirit stones can be said to be the largest amount of money in the hands of the rabbits at present, which is equivalent to half of the spirit stone vein that was not developed by Director Fei Chu. Of course, if this part of the spirit stones is converted into Chinese currency, it is indeed not much, only more than 3 billion, which is not even a cow's hair in front of the size of a country. But the same thing. This is the Great Mo realm. The relationship between spirit stones and Chinese currency should not be calculated equally. If Chinese currency can be exchanged for spirit stones, the rabbits are even willing to pay a premium of 10 times or even 100 times to exchange them infinitely. 100 times of 3 billion is only 300 billion, which is really nothing for China's financial capacity and foreign exchange reserves. But unfortunately, the rabbits can't get stuck like this. In short, with this amount of spirit stones, the rabbits can not only purchase various basic resources, but also increase the preparation of the L17 cultivation environment. After all, the L17 cultivation system needs spirit stones to promote the right shift of the reaction chain. And just a few hours after the payment was delivered, a big event also happened in the Xinhao camp. The first batch of 2-headed calves were released. Note, it has been 3 days since I last updated the book. Today I updated twice, and tomorrow I will continue to update 3 times. I haven't recommended a book for a long time. I recommend a book, War Chess Game, Sandbox War, which has a very interesting setting. Chapter 340, the first batch of hybrid double-headed cattle released. Damo Realm, Xinhao Camp. At this moment, Lin Lizhen, Lin Ziming, Wang Qiang and others who had just returned to the camp from the mainland, led by Liu Zhenhan, the director of the Monster Management Center, walked towards the Monster Management Center with laughter. In addition to Lin Ziming and Wang Qiang, Lin Li was accompanied by Dai Chaohong, Yan Xiaoxin and other major leaders or scientific researchers in the camp. Even Yuan Lao rarely showed up, walking with Huazia Amo. At this time, everyone looked very relaxed, without any haze or tension between their brows. Combined with the barbecue grill that Wang Qiang was carrying, it looked like a team-building camping. This was a rare sight for the rabbits after they arrived in Damo Realm. What made everyone so happy was a piece of news from Liu Zhenhan not long ago. The first batch of the first generation of two-headed bull juveniles hybridized from Damo Realm and the mainland were officially released. It was mentioned before. The status of the two-headed bull species in the monster world is not high, even lower than the black-winged snake. Except for their special ability to impact the city defense formation when they gather in formation, they can only act as cannon fodder most of the time. At the same time, unlike other carnivorous monsters, the two-headed bull never eats meat. Their rations are only various trace elements in popularity, which can be completely attributed to the category of vegetarian animals. This can actually be explained by natural selection, because their status in the monster world is too low, no one can beat them. So naturally they can only eat vegetarian food. Although this statement seems a bit funny, in fact, it is a key factor that cannot be ignored in the long process of evolution, and it can even be said to be one of the main reasons. There are many local animals that are considered vegetarians that eat meat, and they are not pika. For example, rabbits, cattle, sheep, horses, and pandas are all like this. Local cattle will eat chickens, deer will eat birds, and rabbits love to eat meat, and they are all active. This is a remnant that has not been completely corrected in the evolutionary process, because they can beat chickens and birds. Some of their ancestors were simply large carnivores, but they transformed into vegetarians or omnivores in the long process of evolution. The core reason behind this is that there is no meat source that can be defeated or it has been domesticated. The ancestor of cattle, the aurochs, is a typical example. The original aurochs could not directly use the cellulose and lignin in the vegetation, and would even die if they ate it. But later in the process of domestication, they derived the intestinal flora. Those who have studied biology and have not failed the course should know this. In a terrestrial ecosystem, energy flows along the food chain. First, plants fix the light energy provided by the sun through photosynthesis. Secondly, herbivores obtain the energy they need by eating plants. Finally, carnivores obtain energy from the meat of herbivores. Considering that the energy conversion efficiency of each level of the food chain does not exceed 10%, the number of carnivores that an ecosystem can support is actually very limited. It takes a lot of energy to feed a group of carnivores. Therefore, the lower the status of the organism. In the long evolutionary process with tens of millions of years as the observation point, almost all of them will become vegetarians in the end. This can also prove the food chain status of the demon world. The two-headed cow is definitely the lowest category. Here is another sentence. Inversely, we can get another statement. As humans have evolved to the top of the food chain, we must be inseparable from meat. Some vegetarians who are vegetarians for religious or ideological reasons belong to a minority group and should be respected, but are not representative. At least from the perspective of race, those who don't allow us to eat meat, eggs, and milk are stupid, either stupid or bad. Let's return our attention to the crowd. At this time, Liu Zhenhan was walking with everyone in the factory area, and introduced, Captain Lin. This time our breeding experts have set up 2 observation areas specifically for breeding. Each observation area is home to 100 cows, named Area A and Area B. Area A houses female two-headed cows, which are bred by artificially inseminating them with the X-semen of local high-quality bulls. Area B houses local female cows, and the breeding targets are our preferred male two-headed cows. The breeding in Area B relies on pheromones, which were the substances we used to induce the two-headed cows to flee the main battlefield during the Battle of Xiaolianzishan. Lin Li listened as he walked, and then he thought of something and asked Liu Zhenhan, Director Liu, are the cattle being paired this time all local? Aren't those foreign girls like Japanese Wagyu or Angus cows involved in the breeding process? Liu Zhenhan shook his head and said, Captain Lin, don't forget that our ultimate goal is to produce optimized local cattle and gain the right to set meat prices. If we mix cattle from other countries, whether they can be optimized or not is another matter. Do you think they are still local cattle? We can't say that they can be naturalized as local cattle after staying in our country for a few years and meeting the requirements. It doesn't make sense. To be honest, our local cattle may have a gap in taste compared with other cattle. We have to admit this, because the top beef is the result of long-term optimization. But Captain Lin, a large part of the reason for this situation is that the local breeding technology is relatively backward. The quality and genes of local cattle are still very strong, and their advantages are also obvious. Whether it is Wagyu, Angus cattle, or Danish cattle, their 3 generations before breeding do not have much advantage over local cattle. Unless all local cattle are determined to be unable to breed offspring, we will definitely give priority to local cattle. Lin Li then remembered the original intention of capturing the 2-headed cattle, nodded, and stopped talking. Then the crowd walked for about 10 minutes and finally came to the door of a closed tall factory building. Liu Zhenhun stepped forward and scanned his irises, muttering to himself, "The 2-headed cows we breed are all monsters that have not entered the class level, so they are very simple to control. Therefore, the supporting equipment is not as strict as that of the 1st and 2nd class monsters. At least, you don't have to sing every time like in the 2nd class monster area to verify that you have not been possessed. Beep beep," very quickly. The equipment lock made an electronic sound and slowly turned on. Liu Zhenhun led Yan Xiaoxin and other military cadres to enter first. After the police officers took their positions, Lin Li and others entered in turn. Miami. As soon as they entered the factory, everyone heard a strange syllable that was somewhat similar to mu, but in fact it was completely different. If you have to describe it, it should be pronounced like me-o. Lin Li looked in the direction of the sound source. Sure enough, the ones who made this strange syllable were several calves behind the fence. However, unlike their fathers, or mothers, the skin color of these calves was obviously more yellowish, and the overall fleshiness was more inclined to the middle and back half. Of course, they still have 2 heads. Note, today I will update twice to keep fit, and tomorrow I will update more. I have already ordered the boatman's treasure recommended in the comments, the lemon flavor, and I will tell you how it feels after I receive it. Chapter 341 Chapter 338 The first batch of hybrid double-headed cattle released. The factory that Lin Li and others entered was of medium size. Area A was on the left, and Area B was on the right. There was a 7 or 8 meter long walkway in the middle. Each area had several pens where 2-headed cattle were kept separately. The ground inside the pens was covered with some weeds, and near the outside were water sources and feeding troughs. In the troughs were some fertilizers and broken bricks. The pens were separated from the outside world by a transparent high-strength glass, which was relatively free for 2-headed cattle, at least compared to the 1st and 2nd level monsters. Wang Qiang looked at the calves in front of her and said in surprise, "Director Liu, these calves look so big." As a serious person, Wang Qiang's nature refers to the size of the calves, not other parts. Just as the girl said, these calves are nearly 2 meters long and are half the size of their parents. They are even bigger than some local cattle. Lin Li, who was standing by, was not surprised by this and explained, "Xiao Wang, I guess you didn't hear clearly when you came. Director Liu said out of the market." Out of the market literally means that it can be slaughtered, which means that the young are fully formed. Some special individuals with good development may be able to mate and breed when they are out of the market. It would be abnormal if they were not this big. Liu Zhenhun smiled and nodded. The birth date of this batch of calves was about a month ago, and they were all born naturally. But at that time, Liu Zhenhun considered that for a new hybrid breed, birth only represented the first hurdle. Whether there are any growth problems remains to be seen. Therefore, he simply wrote a report and did not remember to invite Lin Li and others to inspect. To put it bluntly, no one can say for sure how many hours the young can live, and they may die the next day. The task of the Monster Management Center is to optimize the hybrid 2-headed cattle population that can reproduce normally. There is no point in doing superficial work to please the leaders. Therefore, it was not until more than a month later that it was confirmed that these calves had taken shape and their health met the requirements. Liu Zhenhong invited Lin Li. "Look, the soup base and seasoning are ready. After all, the purpose of breeding 2-headed cattle is to serve as beef cattle rather than oxen for farming. The quality of breeding must be based on taste. For example, the Wagyu Hybrid Breeding Center in Xianfu. Except for special individuals, most of the 2nd-generation bodies are put into the hot pot every time. This is also the reason why most of the staff engaged in beef cattle and sheep breeding are fat, which is acquired. There are more than 30 calves slaughtered by the Monster Management Center this time. Not to mention all of them. At least 1/3 of them must go into the pot. But before the meal, Liu Zhenhan still has to report the characteristics of the hybrids. He pointed at the sign of Area Ob and said, "Captain Lin, the original idea of setting up Areas Ob was to set up a control group for a control experiment. That is, we wanted to see if we could breed offspring with only one head by controlling the maternal race of the embryo. But the gene that controls the formation of two heads seems to be a phenotypical expression trait, and it will not change with changes in the paternal or maternal line. So from this perspective, our attempt is actually a failure. To solve this problem, we may have to do the same as Mr. Yuan did in the past and look for special mutants with only one head among the two-headed cows." Liu Zhenjing first objectively admitted the failure of the control group. This is a very common situation in the field of hybridization. In fact, failure is often the norm. Some unlucky researchers are not uncommon for breeding failures throughout their lives. Therefore, Lin Li did not blame Liu Zhenhan, but patted him on the shoulder with a smile. "Thank you for your hard work, Director Liu. It's not hard, we have to have this awareness in this line of work." Liu Zhenhan smiled honestly, and then pointed to a calf and said, "But in addition to the number of heads, we still have some achievements in the optimization of other sexual characteristics. For example, this offspring is a combination of the local Xiangxi yellow cattle and the Damo realm double-headed cattle. You can see that its body surface is relatively uniform, especially on the back, without too many bulges. But the double-headed cattle of the Damo realm are different. Perhaps because they need to take on the task of attacking the city defense during the beast tide, the double-headed cattle of the Damo realm have a lot of meat accumulated in the front half. This makes the bones in the shoulder blade area of the double-headed cattle of the Damo realm extremely thick, but the actual fat content is not high. In other words, the meat is very dry. The taste is not very good whether it is roasted, shabu-shabu, stewed or air-dried." Hearing this, Lin Li couldn't help but carefully observe the entire pen. Sure enough, just as Liu Zhenhan said, the front body of the two-headed bull in the Damo world is much thicker than the hind body. It's like a big man with a strong back and strong waist, but his lower body has chopstick legs and a four waist, which is a bit out of place. This is the evolutionary effect of the two-headed bulls in the long-term siege process. The collision of the formation has prompted their shoulder blades to be able to withstand extremely high impact. Just like the neck of a giraffe, if you want to survive, you must evolve in that direction. This evolutionary direction is a normal evolution for the two-headed bulls in the demon world, but it is obviously the opposite for domesticated beef cattle. Therefore, Liu Zhenhan and others listed it as one of the secondary attack optimization directions, hoping to optimize normal individuals. However, optimization is a long process, and it cannot be improved in 1 or 2 generations. For example, the first generation of hybrid calves in front of Lin Li and others. Although it looks more symmetrical, it is still a clear gap from the flat back of beef cattle. According to the plan of Liu Zhenhan's team, they will strive to complete this sign reversal within 3 to 4 generations. This cycle is actually similar to the local optimization cycle, that is, the number of generations is the same. However, since the gestation period of the Damoji double-headed cattle is very short, the optimization speed of the same period may be 4 or 5 times that of the local ones. Then Liu Zhenhan introduced some other optimization information. For example, horns, hooves, tails, etc. Then, the feast began. Liu Zhenhan took everyone to an open space outside a factory building, which was now filled with a large amount of fresh beef. There were beef brisket, beef eye, sirloin, fillet, beef ribs, cucumber strips, etc. The internal organs were classified as offal, bullwhip, eggs, etc. The cow is a very interesting creature. The cooking methods of different parts are completely different, and the taste is also completely different. For example, cucumber strips are suitable for stir-frying, beef tendons and offal are suitable for stewing, and beef ribs and sirloin are suitable for frying or roasting. Hybrid cattle are not genetically modified or cross-species mating, and there are almost no areas such as lesions. In addition, Liu Zhenhan's team had carefully checked the quality of various parts before the feast began. Therefore, everyone had only expectations for this feast, not fear. Sizzle, a drop of hot oil slowly slides down the lines of the plump meat, which is intoxicating. The grill is piled with dark red charcoal. This kind of charcoal is not the hottest, but it has a stable fire and is most suitable for the beginning stage. Dark meat and white fat are arranged in a staggered manner like plum blossoms and bamboos. The chef in charge of the barbecue is named Yuan Hao, a local chef who made his fortune with egg fried rice. As the skewers of meat rolled, Yuan Hao picked up a silver toothpick. In the moment before the snow-white fat melted, quickly poke a few holes in the lean meat on the iron skewers. Because there is a channel for venting, the melted fat immediately seeps into the lean meat on all sides. There are still some places that are difficult to poke holes, so Yuan Hao flexibly turns the skewers a few times. Let the beef fat immediately flow to the lean meat where it is needed. His expression is calm and calm. His hands are flying, turning the skewers at a dazzling speed. In the meantime, various seasonings are also applied. The meat was grilled without a drop of fat or seasoning spilling out. All of it was left on the skewers. Wang Qiang, Lin Li and others were better off. How could Huizai Amo, a native of the Great Mo realm, have ever seen such a scene? The little girl stayed beside Yuan Hao, staring at the skewers of meat spinning like a flying bird without blinking. Her Adam's apple rolled up and down, and she swallowed saliva in big mouthfuls. Her little tail was shaking behind her. Just when Huizai Amo was in a daze, suddenly, she saw two skewers of meat with fragrant aroma appear in front of her. The little girl took it subconsciously, and immediately raised her head to look at Yuan Hao. Yuan Hao smiled. Eat it, it's cooked. Huizai Amo blinked and was about to stuff the grilled meat into her mouth. During this period of time, this outsider had been tamed and had no wildness. As a result, she suddenly remembered Yuan Lao's teachings and shook her tail to Yuan Hao. Thank you. Then she couldn't wait to stuff the skewers into her mouth. As soon as it entered her mouth, the unknown fat turned into golden transparent substance, which melted on the tongue. The melted juice slid into the throat, leaving only a mouthful of wonderful taste. What was even more wonderful was the lean meat. The golden oil completely permeated the period. When I took a bite, I felt an indescribable fragrance rushing straight to my head and lingering in my mouth. The lean meat was very chewy. As the teeth bit together, a little bit of gravy slowly seeped out, spreading this unique delicacy throughout the mouth and filling every taste bud. This wonderful taste was like a spring breeze blowing across the wilderness, and like being in a field of flowers. Huizai Amo almost swallowed her tongue directly. Faced with such a delicious food, the little girl was reluctant to eat too fast. But the attraction of that delicious food made it impossible to control herself. In this contradictory mentality, Huizai Amo quickly finished a skewer of barbecue. Looking at another skewer of fragrant meat in her hand, a hint of entanglement appeared in the little girl's eyes. But this tangle was fleeting. She turned around, jumped and ran to Yuan Lao, and handed the skewer to him. Yuan Lao touched her head lovingly, took a symbolic bite, and returned the rest of the skewer to her. Seeing this, everyone couldn't help but let out a good-natured laugh. Then there was an extremely enjoyable whole beef feast. While enjoying the delicious food, everyone also looked forward to the scene of the two-headed bull killing all over the local area after the optimization was successful. By the way, this barbecue was not a celebration banquet. Therefore, everyone did not drink alcohol, but only huing juice. Now is not the time to really enjoy it. 3 hours later, when everyone was almost full, Lin Li's assistant Zhang Guanghe walked over quickly. Captain Lin, there is a new situation. Note, does anyone know which big guy gave a chapter recommendation yesterday? It didn't get recommended, but the collection increased by 700 or 800. This effect can probably be achieved by no more than 30 books on Kidian, but I don't have PY. Is there any friend who saw this book yesterday? Or a public account or something like that? I was bored, so I bought a bunch of native harvester ants and an acrylic ant nest, and started raising ants from now on. Chapter 342 The first local sword immortal is about to be born. On the open ground. Seeing Zhang Guanghe rushing over, Lin Li's expression suddenly straightened. Xiao Zhang, what happened? Seeing Lin Li with a solemn face, Zhang Guanghe just realized that he was a little anxious, and hurriedly forced a smile. Captain Lin, don't worry, it's good news. What news? Comrade Xiao Yi and Patriarch Wei Fan are about to break through. Hearing Zhang Guanghe's words, Lin Li was stunned for a moment, and then overjoyed. Needless to say, Wei Fan's realm is the 9th level of key training, and everyone should know it. Therefore, he must be breaking through to the foundation building realm at the moment, becoming the third foundation building realm in Qi County City, and making up for the number of the purple-robed old man who fell. Foundation building cultivators in their 40s are not uncommon in the Great Mo realm. But combined with the Wei Fan's 3 spiritual roots, it is different. It can be said that if there is no resource tilt of the rabbits, it will take at least several years for Wei Fan to break through to the foundation building realm. As for Xiao Yi, his cultivation is naturally far inferior to Wei Fan, and he did not break through to the foundation building realm. But his breakthrough is even more important than Wei Fan's in nature. The word important here has nothing to do with closeness, but because Xiao Yi's original realm is the 6th level of Qi training, and he is about to break through to the 7th level of Qi training. It was mentioned a long time ago. There are 2 very important realms in the Qi training period. One is the 4th level of Qi training, which can give birth to divine thoughts. The second is the 7th level of Qi training, which can refine a magic weapon to fly in the air. This kind of magic weapon is also called the life magic weapon, which will accompany the practitioner for a lifetime until the end of life. According to the local saying of the Great Mo realm, the life magic is connected to the practitioner's mind. Once there is a problem, the practitioner's realm may be greatly affected. I wonder if there are students with good memory who remember one thing. During the siege, several practitioners in Qi County City used magic weapons on the city wall to resist the enemy. Wei Fan controlled the big tripod, Wei Qiangsheng controlled the coffin, and a young woman controlled a red water chestnut. At that time, the red water chestnut was torn apart by the 2nd-level giant monster, causing the young woman to spit blood and become listless, completely losing her combat power. This is the consequence of the destruction of the life magic weapon. The woman's name is Wei Kengyao, and she is at the 7th level of Qi training, with 3 spiritual roots. She is considered to be the most qualified junior in Qi County City, and even has the potential to build a foundation. However, after her life magic weapon was destroyed, Wei Kengyao's cultivation fell to the 5th level of Qi training. In actual combat, she is not as good as many practitioners who are at the 4th level of Qi training and have just given birth to divine thoughts. Theoretically, this girl may never be able to recover her cultivation in this life. Of course. Now that Qi County City has embraced the rabbits, no one can say whether there will be other variables in the future. At present, Liu Xiangqian's team has started research on divine thoughts, or pineal glands, and has achieved some results. However, this result has not yet been applied, so Xiao Yi's breakthrough can be said to have given the research team a good opportunity to observe. As for Xiao Yi's cultivation magic weapon, the rabbits have prepared it long in advance. The magic weapons of the Great Mo realm are very complex, and are at the same level as alchemy and talisman making. The strength of the magic weapon itself is one aspect, and the effects of conducting and sensing spiritual power are also different. Before mentioning the magic weapon, we must first talk about a concept. That is, hardness and strength are 2 different things. Strength refers to the ability of a material to resist deformation and fracture, while hardness refers to the ability of a material to resist other materials from entering it. In fact, from a physical point of view, the correlation between hardness and elastic modulus is higher than that between strength. According to the information collected by the rabbits so far, the hardest alloy of the rabbits is chromium white cast iron, which is roughly equivalent to the hardness of the magic tools below the 3rd level of the Danji realm. The highest strength of the local titanium alloy can be compared to the 5th level of the Danji realm. Some magic tools above it have special talisman enhancement effects, and their hardness and strength are much higher than those of the local ones. In addition, there is spiritual energy to fill the outer shell. In fact, this is normal. After all, the trend of the development of local military technology is strong in attack and weak in defense. The strength properties of materials are actually affected by military technology to a certain extent. However, in the 2 realms of Qi training and foundation building, the local alloys are more than enough. Later, Lin Li and others rushed back to the camp accompanied by Zhang Guanghua, and met Liu Xiangqian and Hua Jun, who had been waiting in a practice room in the camp. Of course. It also includes the 2 protagonists of this breakthrough, Xiao Yi and Wei Fan. Lin Li hurriedly greeted several people, and then looked at Hua Jun and Liu Xiangqian. Academician Hua, Mr. Liu, are the equipment ready? Liu Xiangqian nodded, pointed to a somewhat strange device and said, Xiao Lin, this is a new divine thought sensing device we have developed. Based on our research over this period of time, we can basically determine that divine thought is a special wave. However, The wavelength and characteristics of this wave have yet to be analyzed. We can only be sure that it is much more penetrating and more active than ordinary waves. However, the divine thought is said to be a wave, which is actually a more biased concept. Just like when we talk about mammals, we don't think of whales subconsciously. It's not to be ignored, but it has already deviated from our common cognition. However, although it is not possible to analyze the principle of divine thought, it is not difficult to detect divine thought, especially in this fixed point and directional area. Our device is called the divine thought sensor, also known as the divine sensor. In addition to scientific and technological means, it also combines a sensor symbol newly cracked by academician Hua. The two principles of technology and practice are running at the same time, which can clearly identify the fluctuations of divine thought. Lin Li reached out and touched the device that looked a bit like a security door, and nodded slightly. Although he was not a researcher of divine thoughts, he did not know much about this aspect. But since Liu Xiangqian dared to say so, it showed that his device should be relatively reliable. Then he looked at a shelf on the other side. These shelves were filled with various magical instruments. There were knives, guns, sticks, swords, etc. There were all kinds of weapons, and even some other strange weapons. There were two sources of these weapons. One was the magical instruments refined locally in the Great Mo realm. The other was the magical instruments produced industrially, and the factory labels could be seen on them. Of course, the magical instruments were not just a shell, which was only a form, but also needed a spirit. Therefore, after the many magical instruments of the rabbits were refined, they specially asked the old master Wei and Wei Shooter to help refine them. That is to add a sensing core that was necessary for the magical instruments of the Great Mo realm. In a sense, this core was the body of the natal magical instrument. Note, there is one more chapter, but seeing as it is almost early morning, there is no need to wait. Chapter 343, Awesome Operation. Core. Its importance can be seen from the name. This is the most critical part of a magic weapon. Just like the West cannot lose Jerusalem, Manchester United cannot lose Lingard, and the Northeast cannot lose Senior Zhang Miao. A magic weapon without its core is like an Airbus. Some students may have found it strange before. Although the natal magic weapon is important, it is theoretically difficult for a practitioner in the key training realm to find the materials for a magic weapon of the giant in realm level when he is at the 7th level of key training, even if he has the help of his family, right? In this way, once the practitioner becomes stronger in the future, when he reaches a higher realm, won't the natal magic weapon be a drag? The answer to the above questions lies in this core. As long as the core mark is not damaged, the practitioner can upgrade the magic weapon by adding materials to it in the future. Of course, the shape of the magic weapon cannot be changed. What it looks like at the beginning will always be the same. The reason is that the spiritual power conducted by the core mark will be affected by the appearance of the magic weapon. Although the Great Mo realm may not have the academic concepts of force and balance, there is not much difference in essence. Then Lin Li glanced at Xiao Yi and asked, Comrade Xiao Yi, have you chosen your natal magic weapon? What weapon are you going to use? Xiao Yi nodded, took out a long sword from his back and handed it to Lin Li. Report to Captain Lin, it's ready. It's this broken soul sword. The sword body is made of a steel-nickel variant alloy. The tensile strength is 880 MPa and the Mohs hardness is 6.8. According to academician Hui, as long as our technology improves, this alloy can be upgraded in the future like other natal magic weapons. Then Xiao Yi smiled and scratched his head, and said, this sword was suggested by academician Hu and others. I personally like it very much, so I decided on it. After all, being a sword fairy is the dream of every Chinese. By the way, Captain Lin, this shouldn't be considered feudal superstition, right? Lin Li smiled and waved his hand. Of course not, it's just an expectation. Didn't you see that the Mars rover is called Zhuran? Don't be too sensitive, relax. As he said that, he took the broken soul sword and looked at it carefully. This is a silver long sword, about 1.5 meters long, but not particularly heavy. It is engraved with the word Duan written in official script and Po written in cursive script. The official script is in front and the cursive script is in the back. It is obvious that the person who carved this Duan Po sword is a Han fan. Wang Qiang watched for a few moments as if joining in the fun, and suddenly asked Hua Jun, Academician Hua, can we add some tricks to this broken soul sword? Hua Jun glanced at her and asked, what tricks? Wang Qiang thought about it with her fingers, and gestured. For example, We can prepare liquid nitrogen tetroxide and RNX solid fuel in a certain part of the sword body. As long as they are operated properly, they will be very safe. Then we prepare a switch and set up a false touch insurance or something. When encountering an enemy, Comrade Caoyu presses the switch, and the two substances will react instantly to produce a large amount of water vapor. Then we cool it down by condensation, so that the water vapor forms water mist, which is moisture. This moisture looks very similar to water-attributed exercises. At that time, Comrade Caoyu will shout something like autumn water separation Jew. If nothing unexpected happens, the opponent will most likely take out the earth-attributed talisman to deal with it, because earth controls water. Lin Li's expression was a little strange at this time, and he quickly understood his students' thoughts. I remember that the secondary attack and killing technique that Caoyu practiced seemed to be the wood-attributed Bizio Shu. Wang Qiang nodded quickly, her expression eager to try. Yes, wood overcomes earth. So if the opponent takes out the earth-attributed defensive talisman, for Comrade Caoyu, wouldn't it be a built-in armor-breaking technique? If the opponent doesn't handle it well, he will definitely be seriously injured if not dead. Students who have learned to build rockets should all know. Nitrogen tetroxide plus unsymmetrical dimethylhydrazine are conventional propellants for rocket engines. Among them, unsymmetrical dimethylhydrazine is highly toxic, has active chemical properties, and has very low safety. However, since they should be stored at room temperature, most rocket propellants are these two substances. Here is a little known fact. Some countries that talk about environmental protection every day also use this stuff, and there was a year when a leak caused a lot of pollution. In addition, unsymmetrical dimethylhydrazine is indeed difficult to make and has a low fault tolerance rate. At the same time, Wang Qiang's idea is just to produce a lot of water vapor. Therefore, this girl simply replaced it with RNX solid fuel. As for the heat generated by the reaction of the two substances, it doesn't matter. The tolerance point of the alloy material of the broken soul sword is very high. At most, we can just add another step to neutralize it. Even amateur scientists can come up with a bunch of practical solutions for this step, so it's not a big deal. I have to say, Wang Qiang, this girl, still has some tricks in her head. As soon as she said this, Lin Li, Huajun and even Caoyu were moved. Although the main enemy of the rabbits is the monster beast, or more broadly, the monster world. But from the overall social structure of the Great Mo world, the rabbits will inevitably have to reason with some tyrants in the future. The previous Mo family in Yangbai City is a good example. And if you reason, there may be some conflicts. Therefore, Wang Qiang's idea is really feasible, and it may be effective. The mouth of a cultivator may lie. But the fluctuations in the surrounding environment will not be false, and the perception of the divine mind will not be a problem. Judging and making decisions based on the other party's behavior in battle is the instinct of the cultivators in the Great Mo world. Just like before some fire-attributed skills are activated, the surrounding temperature will rise. The earth attribute will produce a smell of actinomyces geosmin. The same is true for water attributes, which will condense a lot of moisture. Everyone has more or less heard this sentence: metal overcomes wood, wood overcomes earth, earth overcomes water, water overcomes fire, and finally fire overcomes metal. And this principle of the five elements mutual restraint also applies to the Great Mo realm. That is to say, when seeing the opponent preparing to use water attribute skills, the enemy will most likely take out earth attribute defensive talismans or magic tools. At this time, Caoyu slashed out the wood attribute skill Bizio Shu that restrains earth attribute. This feeling is like when you return home on Valentine's Day and see a rose on the table. You are very excited, but a few seconds later you find out that it is the neighbor Wang who gave it to your wife. It is basically an even more severe defense. And even if the opponent is also a steady and useless trick, the rabbits will at most lose some reaction materials. The cost of the items that meet Wang Qiang's requirements is only more than 30 yuan, which is not enough for a month's phone bill in the local area. Therefore, Lin Li rarely knocked on the head of his trader, but secretly accepted her proposal. He even thought further ahead, since this trick can be used on the broken soul sword, then in the future, when other local practitioners are refining their own life instruments, can they also think of this set? Some reactants may be difficult for individuals to obtain or are simply contraband. If you use them, you will be sent to the police station in minutes. But for the country, it is not a problem at all. Perhaps in the eyes of other old scholars, This method is not up to standard or even sneak attack without martial ethics. But Linley doesn't care about these. It can increase the chances of our soldiers in battle and reduce some casualties. What does this matter? Of course. Having ideas is having ideas. Now the priority is not to transform the weapons, but to let Xiao Yi and Wei Fan break through their realms first. Note, the third chapter is presented. Are you still not sleepy? Let me see if I can write another chapter. It's not too much to give some monthly tickets, right? Chapter 344 Utsumi's Speculations. Seeing that Wei Fan and Xiao Yi's cultivation was full to the point of overflowing, it was easy to cause trouble if not dealt with. Lin Li hurriedly returned the broken soul sword to Xiao Yi, and Liu Xianqian took the two into two practice rooms respectively. The practice room used by Xiao Yi and Wei Fan this time was the same as the one used to detect the divine consciousness, both of which were closed dome structures. The biggest feature of this practice room is that it mainly uses equipment for observation and sampling. There is no camera installed for real-time recording, which guarantees personal privacy to the greatest extent. From the perspective of difficulty, Xiao Yi's breakthrough is actually a little simpler than Wei Fan's. Because he only needs to provide enough spiritual energy, the difficulty lies in the fusion of the divine consciousness and the core mark of the magic weapon. Wei Fan's situation is more complicated. After all, it is a breakthrough in a great realm. In addition to sufficient spiritual energy, the breakthrough of the Great Mo realm to practice the 9th level of key training requires a special item called Millennium Stalactite and Vermilion Fruit. These two items are very valuable, and the unit price is hundreds or even thousands of spiritual stones. It is not difficult to buy them at the same time. At least the cycle will not be very short. This is why it might take Wei Fan several years to successfully build his foundation without the help of the rabbit. It's just that Xiao Yi's time will definitely be longer. After all, the process is more complicated. After everything was ready, the two began to break through at the same time. In theory, there is no risk in Wei Fan's breakthrough. After all kinds of resources are ready. If he still can't break through, he might as well jump off a cliff and open a small account. This time, he was allowed to enter the practice room mainly to collect samples and enrich the database. Therefore, the real focus of Liu Xianqian and others is on Xiao Yi. The thermal image still appeared in front of everyone, responsible for observing the transfer of some substances in the bodies of the two. But what is different from the original is that there are many more golden lines on this thermal image. Liu Xianqian pointed to the line segment and introduced, Xiao Lin, this is the wave-sensitive image detected by our divine sensor. When combined with the thermal image, it is even more intuitive than the real-life image. This bright white color located in Comrade Xiao Yi's brain is the pineal gland. The few lines around it represent the range of his divine thoughts at this time, which ends at about 1 meter around his body. Lin Li nodded with interest. Then he looked at Wei Fan's image, which was similar to Xiao Yi's. It's just that the luminous body is larger and the diffraction distance is farther. Then Lin Li suddenly thought of something and said to Liu Xianqian, Mr. Liu, can this divine sensor be used to detect the exploration of foreign divine thoughts? For example, in large cities like Zhejiang City, it can be used to sense foreign peeping. Lin Li's mind is very sharp. After understanding the characteristics of the divine sensor, he immediately thought of a deeper application. Although the foreign trade delegations all speak Chinese in private, in theory, they will not be eavesdropped because of language conversations. But if someone uses divine thoughts to monitor for a long time, some secrets may be leaked out due to daily behavior. Of course, it's not that Yang Bali and Man Ying are eavesdropping on the secrets outside. With Yang Bali's IQ, he shouldn't do such stupid things during the honeymoon period, and there is no need. At the same time, although the trade group did not carry equipment similar to the divine sensor, it is relatively simple to ensure that no one is monitoring it with the addition of cameras, Wei Qiangsheng and some sensing talismans. Therefore, Lin Li is thinking of a long-term plan. Even if Zhejiang City is in a honeymoon period now, it will not do anything to the rabbits. But what about later? Or when the rabbits deal with other cities? With the development speed of the rabbits, it is inevitable that the map will be pushed outward. The targets of future contacts cannot be limited to Zhejiang City or the South region. Don't you see that Chen Fei has been stationed in Frost Snow City for more than 4 months? In this case, if the divine sensor can be brought to other areas for use, it will undoubtedly be a very reliable backup. Although the Great Mo realm also has similar sensing talismans. But from the inner perspective, Lin Li still prefers to believe in his own people's technology. After all, that kind of talisman has been introduced before, and it really doesn't have much technical content. Facing Lin Li's somewhat urgent questions, Liu Xiangqian considered for a while and said, "Xiao Lin. For now, it is still quite troublesome for us to use the divine sensor at a long distance. First, it is a problem of the size of the equipment. The entire set of equipment occupies an area of nearly 40 square meters. Second, the accuracy needs to be debugged. For example, the range of a few meters we are now is not bad, and we can collect very detailed and accurate data. But once the distance exceeds 20 meters, the internal computer may be overloaded and fail due to the sample load. Once the computer fails, it will be difficult for the remaining other sensing talismans to capture divine thoughts." Lin Li's eyes fluctuated slightly, and he didn't speak. Seeing that Lin Li seemed a little disappointed, Liu Xiangqian added, "Of course, no one can predict what will happen in the future. If Comrade Xiao Ye can provide us with enough data information this time, we may have a technical breakthrough." Lin Li nodded and continued to look at the image. It has to be said. Oftentimes, people who work in biology and medicine are really heavy-handed. For example, at this moment, Lin Li, Liu Xiangqian and others are staring at the screen, afraid of missing any details. But the picture on the screen is not a portrait, but a human body thermographic image of varying shades. For those who don't know about thermographic images, you can imagine the image of a thermal thermometer. It is the kind of image of a human body with yellow and red in it. You should have seen it in hospitals, train stations and other places some time ago. In the words of someone, when you step into medicine or biology, you will never be like a normal person in your life. Is it the inner sea again? Looking at the changing trajectory of a high-level heat energy in the color area, Lin Li couldn't help but touch his chin and frowned. What part is this inner sea? Is it the dantian? The dantian is in the lower abdomen, 3 fingers below the belly button. This should be considered a well-known concept that is not required for compulsory education. If you say you haven't heard of the 4 words Qi Shen Dantian, then it's basically the same as not having heard of the imperial jade liquor. In fact, dantian is not only found in traditional kung fu or novels. There is also a lot of knowledge about dantian in other fields such as singing, broadcasting, and kinesiology. Even when you have a bowel movement, you will use that area to exert force. The so-called dantian is actually related to the core muscle group. It is also commonly known as the diaphragm. Academically, dantian is a force point, not so mysterious. However, considering that there is no spiritual energy in the local area, Lin Li vaguely had a guess in his mind. He asked Liu Xiangqian, "Mr. Liu, do you think it is possible that the abdominal muscle group is degenerated from the inner sea of the cultivation concept? Just like the evolution of the two-headed bull. The shoulders of the two-headed bull need to be used for collision for a long time, so they evolved a raised forequarters. If the local humans did not have enough spiritual energy to mobilize the inner sea, causing the inner sea to degenerate, but still retain some of the properties of the inner sea. This possibility seems to exist. After all, with the discovery of the Qingchang Mountain Heavenly Palace, we can at least be sure that a small number of people in ancient times had contact with the extraordinary realm." Liu Xiangqian thought about it and nodded slightly. "It is indeed possible. You are also a biologist, and you should know the specialness of the inner core myocardium group. Our pelvic floor muscles, transverse abdominal muscles and multifidus muscles cannot be mobilized directly, but can be used to generate force with the help of the overall muscle group. This has actually always been an unsolved mystery of the human body, just as Liu Xiangqian said. The inner core myocardium group can both generate force and stabilize the spine, and its functionality is actually far beyond its own concept. The commonly accepted nickname for the area formed by the 4 peripheral muscles is the airbag. You can imagine the structure of the bones, the empty area below the ribs. The existence of a cavity-like area in the abdomen of the human body is actually contrary to the existing evolution theory. For example, apes, gorillas, lions and tigers do not use this airbag-like structure. They do have abdominal muscles, such as the typical frogs and kangaroos. But they are the rectus abdominis and external oblique muscles, which belong to the outer core muscle group and belong to 2 systems with the transverse abdominal muscles. It's like the difference between Manchester United and Manchester City. They both start with Manchester, but they are actually 2 concepts, so the sky in Manchester is sometimes red and sometimes blue. From the perspective of population, The structure of the inner core myocardium group is truly unique to the human body. Although other animals also have cavities in their abdomens, they are not closed. It's just that there are too many unknown mysteries in the human body. Compared with some other limbs or genetic issues, the evolution of the inner core group is indeed a little transparent. Therefore, there are really not many people who explore it, but those who buy fitness courses are always shouting about the inner core and the inner core. Note: updated. My biological clock is totally messed up now. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 345, Shocking Change. Combined with the previous content, in a sense, the air sac and the inner sea do have some similarities. Therefore, Lin Li's remarks cannot be said to be groundless, but rather a more likely guess. Then Lin Li asked again, Mr. Liu, have you made any new progress in the study of the Qi Si? Liu Xiangqian rubbed his temples and shook his head. There are only a few discoveries, which are not of much practical significance. After all, the Qi Si is not a substantial organ, and currently no particles or substances can enter it. Therefore, what we can do is to mark each tiny particle, and then send it into the body one by one to try to see if it can pass the gateway. Jokingly speaking, it is almost an exhaustive method, because we have too many tiny substances now. As he spoke, Liu Zhangyang sighed helplessly. Just like he said, there are too many tiny substances that can be synthesized chemically and inhaled into the human body. Sometimes, any chemical bond element can be changed diagonally to produce another thing. Guess how many tiny substances have been recorded by humans and can enter the abdominal cavity through capillaries? The answer is more than 4 million. There are more than 60,000 ribozymes alone. Basically, a change in the terminal poly is a new type. Some RNA substances are even more outrageous. A random change in the degree will completely change the sexual characteristics. The difficulty of the microscopic field lies here, and the changes are almost infinite. So Liu Xiangqian's exhaustive method is really right. What they can do is to try to stuff them into the human body one by one to see if they can be absorbed by the inner sea. Even if the Emperor of Europe is possessed, it is estimated that it will take a long time to write this process. Of course, the process is very complicated, and the benefits are naturally not small. As long as a little bit of substance enters the Sea of Qi, this mysterious place can be unveiled. And just as Liu Xiangqian sighed, the main control screen suddenly fluctuated. On the thermal image representing Wei Fan, the warm area suddenly rose, and the outline of the human body was almost red all over. Then these red areas were like fireworks. With a puff, they spread around the outline of the human body, that is, in the practice room. This kind of energy dissipation was encountered by the rabbits a long time ago, representing the breakthrough of a new realm. As expected. After the breakthrough, Wei Fan's image quickly began to stabilize. And all the vital signs instruments also showed normal, obviously adapting to the new realm. Liu Xiangqian hurriedly looked at his assistant Mabo. Xiaoma, have you written down the time and data? Mabo nodded and quickly replied, the breakthrough took 13 minutes 25 seconds 91, and some other data were also written down. The conceptual difference between the foundation building realm and the key training realm is the difference in cultivation, but in fact it is the difference in the purification of spiritual energy. Just like upgrading a 300,000 flash charge to 400,001, the speed and hardware are different. Therefore, the individual breakthrough process is actually just like that, which is an achievement, but there is not much room for research. Of course. The main reason for the above sentence is that the changes in the foundation building realm basically occur within the Qi Si. With the current means of the rabbits, it is temporarily impossible to observe, so naturally there is less information to collect and study. Otherwise, to be more serious, the changes inside the Qi Si are absolutely huge. Just like the CPU upgrade, it is a qualitative leap. And just 10 minutes after Wei Fan broke through, Xiao Yu also officially broke through to the 7th level of key training. The same fireworks-like images exploded, indicating that he had leaped to a new realm. However, unlike Wei Fan, after the breakthrough, the golden line representing the divine thoughts in the picture did not converge. Instead, it slowly extended. Obviously, Xiao Yu was beginning to connect the core mark of his life instrument, Almost everyone was holding their breath, which meant that the first sword immortal in modern times was about to be officially born. That's right. The first in modern times. According to the information the rabbits had previously obtained, 4 of the 28 travelers in Wei Siming's group finally embarked on the path of cultivation, and one of them died before reaching the 7th level of key training. Among the remaining 3 people, whether it was Wei Siming, Cheng Shiking or the other remaining person, their life instruments were not flying swords. The reason was simple: they did not have enough spirit stones, so they could only afford relatively cheap life instruments. And those instruments did not have flying swords, so they had no choice but to choose other weapons to refine. Therefore, apart from Zhang Daoling and other ancient practitioners, Xiao Yu would indeed be the first sword immortal in the country. The sight returned to the original place. At this time, on the main control screen in front of Lin Li and others, a golden line segment as thick as a finger was flying out of Xiao Yu's pineal gland, slowly wrapping an object. The object had no temperature and the outline could not be seen clearly. But it was obvious that this was the broken soul sword. Everything seemed to be going on in an orderly manner. All they had to do was wait for the time to come and Xiao Yu would walk out. However, after half an hour, there was no response in the training room. 1 hour. 1.5 hours. As time passed, everyone's expressions gradually began to change. Until 2 hours later. Lin Li couldn't sit still. Strange, why hasn't Comrade Xiao Yu come out for so long? According to the information we have received, it takes about 2/4 of an hour for ordinary practitioners to refine their own life instruments, and some even take only 1/4 of an hour under sufficient spiritual energy conditions. Comrade Xiao Yu's time has quadrupled. I don't think it's a bit abnormal? Old Liu, is there a problem with the equipment? Liu Xiangqian also looked puzzled at this time, but still shook his head decisively. Xiao Lin, our equipment will definitely not have any problems. This is not because I am blindly confident, but because the indoor equipment and the main control end are connected in series. Once there is a problem with the indoor equipment, our main control's alert patrol system will immediately give feedback. Lin Li couldn't help but purse his lips and frowned when he heard this. At this time, there was a sudden movement in another practice room. Wei Fan appeared. At this time, his face was full of excitement and gratitude, and it seemed that he could do a classic Shawshank move at any time. After all, if it weren't for the help of the rabbits, let alone breaking through the foundation building stage, he couldn't even pass the beast tide. However, before Wei Fan could open his mouth to express his thanks, he saw Lin Li approaching with a serious face. Patriarch Wei, what is the longest time you have heard of for refining a life weapon? Wei Fan was stunned when he heard this. Then he thought of something and turned to look at another practice room. Sure enough, the door was closed. Why, hasn't Brother Xiao Yu come out yet? Lin Li nodded and said with some concern, Comrade Xiao Yu has been in for more than 2 hours, and there is still no news. If it weren't for the somatosensory equipment showing that he still has a heartbeat and body temperature, we would have planned to take emergency measures. Wei Fan heard this, and a trace of barely perceptible worry flashed in his eyes. After that, he thought about it for a while, frowned and said, you should know that it takes only half an hour for ordinary practitioners to refine their own magic tools. But this is a very private and special process after all, and there have been examples in the past where it took a long time to refine. For example, there was a great aunt in the Wei family who spent 3 hours refining her own magic tool. This matter was even recorded in the family's records. Then he paused and said, but it takes too long to refine the magic tool, and there seems to be another rumor. Note, if you went to bed before 11 p.m. last night and woke up after 7:30 today, you may see 4 chapters updated. Is it awesome? Please vote for me. Some comments say that Cheng Xian bought it for nothing, but it's not. It's mainly because of the messy biological clock of typing. In the past, I would have a headache when I woke up from staying up late, but after Cheng Xian lit it, it was not much different from sleeping normally. Chapter 346, The Resolver. In the training room, looking at Wei Fan whose expression kept changing. Lin Li and Liu Xiangqian looked at each other and asked quickly, Patriarch Wei, what did you think of? The current situation is abnormal. Please tell us all the possibilities that come to your mind. Wei Fan nodded gently, organized his words, and said, under normal circumstances, it only takes about 2/4 of an hour for a cultivator to refine his own life magic weapon. But in some very old legends, there have been other special cases in the Great Mo realm. Some cultivators seemed very normal when they were at the 4th level of key training and had just given birth to their divine thoughts. But when they reached the 7th level of key training and refined their own life magic weapons, their divine thoughts would suddenly surge. Hearing this, Linley frowned and asked, "So what happened to these people later? Did they succeed in refining their own life magic weapons?" Wei Fan looked at him hesitantly and said, "It is rumored that some people exploded and died, while some others succeeded. But those who succeeded, without exception, eventually refined 2 life magic weapons." Hearing this, Huajun, who was responsible for refining the life magic weapons, suddenly widened his eyes. "What? One person refined 2 life instruments? What's the principle, life instrument? As the word means, this is an instrument that is connected to the life of the refiner. A person has only one life, so he can only have one life instrument. Just like a charging port can only connect to one USB cable. This is a one-to-one irreversible process." And the example Wei Fan mentioned obviously violated this situation. Facing Huajun's question, Wei Fan shook his head helplessly. "Academician Hu, people who refine 2 life instruments are called heavy spirits. They are like the Yuanying realm masters, invisible to ordinary people, and even almost legendary. It's not easy for us to hear about this special case. As for the reason inside, I'm afraid those big shots don't know it." Huajun heard this, and his face became even more gloomy. Linley, who was standing aside, pursed his lips, with a heavy expression. Then he looked at Liu Xianqian and Huajun and said, "Mr. Liu, academician Hu, let's put aside the theoretical issues of the heavy spirit. Our top priority now is to determine whether Comrade Xiao Yi simply encountered some difficulties, which led to the progress of refining being stuck, or whether the special physique of the heavy spirit was activated. If it is the former, it is easy to deal with. At most, we can spend more time waiting for him to come out of retreat. But if it is the latter, then if we don't take some measures, Comrade Xiao Yi's personal safety may be hard to say." Liu Xianqian nodded in agreement and focused on the incident itself. He rolled his left index finger into the shape of the number 9, and pressed his knuckles on the philtrum to think for a few seconds. Then he suddenly thought of something and his eyes lit up. "Oh, the divine sensor." He rushed back to the main console in one step, and he didn't look like he was in his 70s at all. Heat zone radiation map density bar chart. Liu Xianqian carefully overlapped the image of the divine sensor with some data in the library, like a devout believer standing in front of the altar. After a while, he said excitedly, "Xiaolin. I compared the light perception images of Comrade Xiao Yi and other high-level key training members of the Wei Mansion. I found that the brightness of Comrade Xiao Yi's pineal gland area is indeed 2 to 3 orders of magnitude higher than that of practitioners at the same level. Even several members of the Wei Mansion who have practiced key at the 9th level are not as bright as Comrade Xiao Yi in the image." Linley was shocked and hurried forward. As Liu Xianqian said, the image with Xiao Yi's name on it is indeed brighter. The higher the brightness, the stronger the intensity of the wave of the divine mind. Just like a light bulb, the greater the power, the brighter it is. This situation is completely consistent with the surge in divine mind mentioned by Wei Fan before. To summarize it in academic language, it is an abnormality caused by some kind of overload. Now that things have come to this, a fact is clearly laid out in front of everyone. Xiao Yi is a standard heavy spiritualist. After confirming this situation, Lin Li looked at Wei Fan again. "Patriarch Wei, can we contact Comrade Xiao Yi directly now?" "Absolutely not." Wei Fan waved his hands quickly, his tone very solemn. "The refining of the life weapon is a very private process. Any external disturbance may cause the refiner to go astray. This is also the reason why a considerable number of heavy spiritualists have fallen, because they have no ability to communicate with the outside world, and can only watch themselves explode and die." Hearing the word explosion, Lin Li's eyes flashed with a trace of worry. However, as the highest person in charge at the scene, he knew that he had to stay calm at this time. After all, if he was in chaos, others would also follow suit. Therefore, his back molars quietly exerted force and bit the inner wall of the lip cavity tightly. Using pain to stimulate himself not to lose his composure, he asked calmly, "Patriarch Wei, what should we do now?" Wei Fan hesitated for a while, looked up at the door of the practice room. The door of the practice room does not have the ability to isolate the divine thoughts, and the divine thoughts can penetrate. So in theory, as long as other magic tools with core marks are brought in, Brother Xiao Yi will have a chance to refine one of them. It's just that we can't tell Brother Cao through language that there are magic tools outside the door, and using my divine thoughts won't work. And usually when refining the life magic tools, the cultivator's divine thoughts will basically not be released outside 3 meters around the body. The meaning of Wei Fan's words is very clear. Whether it is Lin Li outside or Cao inside, they must achieve a certain degree of tacit understanding to survive the crisis. Because Cao himself does not know the existence of the unconventional concept of heavy spirits. After a cultivator finds that there is a problem with his refining process and cannot be interrupted, in most cases, he will reflect on whether he has made mistakes in any link, and will not doubt his physical abnormality. Besides, you can't blame Liu Xiangqian and his team for not collecting enough information, or the Wei family for not providing intelligence. In the Great Mo world, the physique of a heavy spirit is the same as an urban legend. It is an extremely illusory rumor, otherwise Wei Fan would not have said the words a very old legend. It's like 2 bags of plasma were lost in the blood bank of a local hospital. Normal people might suspect that they were stolen by patients or that something was missed during transportation. Those with a bigger imagination would at most think that it might be a corner of a gray line in the underground that was accidentally revealed. But no matter how big the imagination is, no one would think of vampires. A heavy spirit is a similar concept. Then Lin Li looked at Hua Jun and asked, "Academician Hua, how many life instruments have you prepared?" Hua Jun thought for a while and said, "About 20 in total, all of which are weapons built according to the prototype of the 18 martial arts. Then bring them all in, don't miss a single one." Hearing Lin Li's order, Hua Jun immediately called his assistants and went to the open space outside to move the instruments. After a while, more than 10 weapons were transported into the laboratory and placed outside the training room. At this moment, Wang Qiang suddenly thought of something. "Teacher, although we can't communicate directly with language and divine thoughts, can we use the interference field strength to communicate with Comrade Cao?" Note, there will be another chapter later. 2 updates today, 3 or 4 updates tomorrow. Chapter 347, the second life magical instrument. Double-slit interference. This should be a relatively well-known physics knowledge. A long time ago, the physics community was divided into 2 schools of thought on the form of light. One school believed that light was a particle, and the other school believed that light was a wave. As for the Douglas school that appeared later, I will not mention it here. At that time, both the wave-particle school and the wave-particle school had sufficient evidence, and neither could convince the other. Later, physicists thought of a way to use the double-slit interference experiment to determine whether it was a particle or a wave. This experiment is actually very simple. Double slits, as the name suggests. It is to open 2 slits on a partition. Then use a machine gun that emits photons to shoot at the double slits. The photons that leak through the slits hit the screen behind the slits, leaving a light spot. Before the experiment, the experimenters made 2 guesses. The first possibility: if the photon is a pure particle, then the screen must leave 2 bars. Photons fired from a machine gun will pass through the slits straightly like bullets, so there must be 2 bars left on the screen. Because photons at other angles are blocked by the board. The second possibility is that if the photon is a pure wave, then there will be stripes like zebra crossings on the screen. Because when the photon passes through the slit, 2 wave sources will be formed. The 2 waves oscillate and interfere with each other. The intensity between the peaks is superimposed, and the positive and negative between the peaks and the troughs are cancelled. In the end, complex and beautiful zebra crossings will appear on the screen, which is the interference stripes. Everyone should know the final result of this experiment, which verifies the wave-particle duality of light. This is actually a very, very creepy experiment. Because its final conclusion is that the result of the experiment depends on whether you observe the photon. What does this mean? Let's take a very simple example that few students can understand. A football match is being broadcast live on your TV, and a player kicks a shot. Pause here. Do you predict whether the ball will go in? In the eyes of fans, whether the ball goes in or not is related to whether the shooter is Ronaldo or Messi, the state of the opponent's goalkeeper, and whether the referee collects money. In the eyes of scientists, there are more things related. For example, the force, speed and direction of the ball, the distance from the goal, even the friction of the grass, the decibel of the fan's roar, etc. As long as these factors are taken into account in the equation, the state of the ball in 3 seconds can be accurately predicted. But whether it is a football fan or a scientist, one thing should be recognized: whether the ball goes in or not has absolutely nothing to do with at least one thing. That is your TV. No matter what brand of TV you use, no matter the size of the TV screen, the clarity, the quality, whether you watch Mego or CCTV5, the ball that should go in will still go in, and the ball that should not go in will not go in. Even if you are so angry that you smash the TV, it will not work. Do you think that all the above is nonsense? Then, listen carefully, the double-slit interference experiment proves that under the same other conditions, whether the ball goes in or not depends directly on whether you watch TV or not at the moment of shooting. Isn't it terrifying? Photons shoot from the transmitter to the double slits, just like a football shooting to the goal. Using a camera to observe whether a photon enters the slit and how it enters is like watching a goal on a TV. You turn on the camera to observe the photon, watch TV, and don't turn on the camera, don't watch TV. The results of the two experiments are completely different. This is the curse of the observer. If you don't look at the photon, it is a wave, and if you look at it, it instantly becomes a particle. To be honest, this thing really can't be studied in depth at present, and if you go deeper, it may even involve the difference between materialism and idealism. It is hard to say whether there are 20 local people who are truly qualified to involve this field and make authoritative voices. It is precisely because of the wave-particle duality of light that Wang Qiang suddenly came up with a new idea to transmit information through radio wave interference. Although we don't know the details of the divine thought at present, Liu Lao's team has long determined that it is a kind of wave. At this time, Wang Qiang was explaining her thoughts to everyone. The divine thought of Patriarch Wei cannot be transmitted because the other end of the divine thought is connected to his pineal gland. Where the divine thought goes and what it does is controlled by his mind. In other words, he is an observer. Since he is an observer, interference will inevitably occur. It's okay on weekdays. Comrade Xiao Yi is currently refining his life magic weapon, so he naturally can't resist this interference. But we are different. We can completely send a section of self-propelled microwave without a carrier. Students who have studied physics must remember a word, wavelength. Wavelength does not mean the sausage sandwiched between waves, but refers to the distance between two adjacent wave crests or two wave troughs along the propagation direction of the wave. Among all kinds of waves, the wavelength of microwaves is 1 meter to 1 millimeter. That is to say, if the conditions are right, sending a microwave that is separated from the terminal is as simple as pressing the remote control at home. The rabbits don't even need to carry any information. Just adjust the frequency of the wave source to be consistent with the divine thought, and the two sides will inevitably produce wave crest interference. And this kind of interference is normal and harmless, which is completely different from the interference caused by divine thoughts. It is almost like a stone falling into the water and causing ripples. Xiao Yi is like a fish at the bottom of the water, and he will definitely react when he hears the sound of a stone falling into the water. After all, as a former frontline police officer, his reaction ability must not be slow. As long as Xiao Yi realizes that the main control station has discovered his abnormality, he will definitely lead his divine thoughts to the gate to refine his life-defining magic weapon. Wang Qiang's proposal was quickly adopted, and the relevant work was handed over to Liu Xiangqian's team for preparation. 10 minutes later, a frequency-modulated device was transported to the main control station, and Liu Xiangqian personally pressed the switch. Then everyone turned their attention to the screen. Hold your breath and concentrate, looking forward to good news. After about a few minutes, the line segment representing the divine thoughts on the screen suddenly began to change. The picture displayed by the previous divine sensor was very clear. The original divine thoughts, except for the broken soul sword, were all taken back into Xiao Yi's body. At this moment, these divine thoughts suddenly began to diverge to the outside. 1.5 meters around, 3 meters around, 5 meters around. Then, outside the door. At the same time, in the training room, Xiao Yi's mood at this time was also quite uneasy, and in the confusion there was a sense of joy of surviving a disaster. Before the microwaves on the main console appeared, he had already reached a state on the verge of the limit of his body. The broken soul sword was successfully refined a long time ago, but for some reason, the divine thoughts in Xiao Yi's mind were still surging and rolling. Xiao Yi had tried to release his divine thoughts, but at this time, the divine thoughts were like springs, and they would automatically return if no extra marks were found. And the longer they were stretched, the longer the feedback would be. Under the impact of a large amount of accumulated divine thoughts, his consciousness was even a little blurred for a while. Fortunately, Just when Xiao Yu was about to run out of energy, a microwave appeared. Just as Wang Qiang said, microwaves did not transmit too much information. But the frequency of its vibration was exactly the same as the divine thoughts, and the peak of the interference pointed to the entrance. Xiao Yu quickly used his last bit of strength to direct his divine consciousness to the outside. Attracted by the many core marks at the door, the released divine consciousness rushed out uncontrollably like a flood. At this time, Xiao Yu was close to a semi-comatose state and could only let his divine consciousness pour out, unable to control himself. In a microscopic world invisible to the naked eye, a large amount of divine consciousness poured out from the training room. At this time, there were nearly 20 life-saving magic tools for the divine consciousness to choose from, and the divine consciousness was not as urgent as before. In confusion, Xiao Yu suddenly felt a big guy farther away. Subconsciously, he used his last bit of strength to direct his divine consciousness in that direction. Then he leaned a little listlessly on the futon in the training room. At the same time, Huajun suddenly burst out with a swear word. Fuck, how did this kid refine the 59 modification I made? Note, that's all for today, and I'll continue tomorrow. Chapter 348 is dead. Chapter 59 is going to heaven. The turret looks scary from a distance, and the 5 pairs of road wheels are close. This sentence that is familiar to military fans is about the Type 59 tank. The Type 59 tank always gives people a mysterious temptation, and it is also a type of tank model that is enduring and continues to be revitalized. It is China's first self-developed main battle tank, and the word first often gives people a sense of mystery. The Type 59 tank was the first local main battle tank copied from the T-54A of the Big Brother next door in the 1950s. It was officially equipped and put into service in 1959, which is the origin of its name, and it is also the usual naming method in our local area. The prototype of the Type 59 tank, the T-54/T-55, has a total production of more than 100,000 units, making it the world's largest tank. At the same time, the Type 59 tank continued to be produced from 1959 to 1985, with a total production of more than 10,000 units. The number is also well-deserved. The first local tank. In addition, the Type 59 tank is also the most modified tank. This is also the most talked about part of military fans, and it has even become a stock. You can say that almost all tanks in China are closely related to the Type 59. The reason why the Type 59 modification has become a meme is not only due to the promotion of the sand sculpture netizens themselves. It is also related to the fact that it is constantly being modified. The tanks you see in Southeast Asia, parts of the Middle East, and North Africa may all be Type 59 modifications. During the honeymoon period, Rabbit and Eagle even launched a Cougar project, the main body of which is the Type 59 tank. The craziest Type 59 modification at present should be the Ariza version. The 105-line plus explosive counter-attack is crazy. It is modified to the point that the mother can't recognize it, but it is still Type 59 modification 5 road wheel chassis plus oval cast turret. This is the most standard Type 59 mark. Just like seeing the sentence XX frowned and retreated behind everyone, you can understand whose work it is. The 5 pairs of road wheels of Type 59 can be said to be engraved deep into the bones. The sight returns to the original place. Why is there a core mark engraved on a Type 59 modification? This has to start from the beginning. The core mark of the natal magic weapon belongs to the business scope of the Talisman Group and is also a part of the cracking project. After finding out that he could only refine the outer shell of the magic weapon but could not crack the core, Huajun quickly found the old Master Wei and others to help. As an armor expert with wild ideas, Huajun would not miss this opportunity, so he specially asked the old Master Wei to refine an extra core and burned it on a newly upgraded 59 modified. That's right. Burned on the 59 modified. At present, the rabbits have more than 400 tanks in the Great Mo realm. Among them, there are about more than 199A, and some are light tanks such as 62B. The rest are all 59 modified, with a number of more than 150. As the top local armor R&D expert and a super boss at the level of deputy chief engineer of 4-something factory, it is too easy for Huajun to deploy a few 59 modified. In fact, it is not only the Talisman R&D team that has this authority, but also some other teams. For example, the Tangpin team that studies firearms often tinkers with some strange weapons to play with themselves. And there is also Liu Xianhong. The Monster Research Center often organizes dinner parties and team building after studying monsters. Otherwise, where do you think the seasoning equipment of Yuan's Hao barbecue comes from? Each R&D team has a certain degree of freedom, as long as they don't abandon their main business. To be honest, the cost of a 59 modified is only more than 3 million Chinese yuan. It would be strange if a team at the top academician level didn't have this kind of autonomy. Even people like Gugu Bird, who have to update 8,000 words every day, have a lot of time to relax after typing. Of course, it's hard to say how much time can be left. Anyway, some people still owe it. Considering that Xiao Yu needs to select a large number of life instruments for this breakthrough, it is troublesome to move. Hu Jun and others chose a practice room close to the R&D center. There are not many people in this confidential area, which fully meets the conditions for breakthrough. Because of this, the 59 modified happened to stay near the house, about 70 or 80 meters away. In addition, Xiao Yu happened to activate the attribute of the heavy spirit. The surging divine consciousness quickly covered the surrounding area, and finally locked onto the Type 59 modified. That is to say, I now not only have two life-defining magic weapons, but one of them is a main battle tank, not the kind that Qiao Bilo has. Beside the main console, Xiao Yi, who had regained consciousness, was looking at Hu Jun in a daze. Academician Hu, don't lie to me. I told you that I have read a lot of books and graduated from a serious police academy. Hu Jun looked at him unhappily and snorted. Can't you tell whether it's true or not? You will know if you mobilize your divine consciousness. Xiao Yi stopped talking immediately. In fact, he could feel it without Hu Jun's prompting. In his mind at this moment, he was vaguely connected to two objects that were connected to his blood. One of them was the broken soul sword behind him. As long as his divine consciousness was activated, the sword body would make a light sound in tacit understanding. Even if he gave an order, the broken soul sword would fly out to kill the enemy. The other one is very special. That item is about 100 meters away from here, and its size in the mind is very huge. Unlike the broken soul sword, that object is extremely difficult to mobilize. If mobilizing the broken soul sword is like picking up a mobile phone or a roll of paper towels, then the strength required to mobilize that big guy is like moving a bag of 50 kilograms of rice. It's not that it can't be moved, but it's very difficult. Lin Li, who was standing aside, saw that Xiao Yi seemed to have recovered almost, so he took the initiative to suggest, everyone, we can't discuss anything if we stay in the house. So why don't we go out and see what the tank that Comrade Xiao Yi refined is like? Everyone had no objection to this and walked out of the door one by one. The tank was very close to the house, and everyone came to it after a few steps. Looking at this big guy covered with camouflage, Xiao Yi's eyes were extremely complicated. This complexity included confusion, weirdness, and unbelievable. It also included excitement and expectation. This is a tank. Which man didn't have a dream of tanks and airplanes when he was a child? The airplane dream later evolved into the dream of shooting down airplanes, but the tank dream never changed. Hu Jun walked to the side of the tank, sighed as if he was appointed, and introduced, the prototype of this 59 modified is 59D, which was developed in 1991 and finalized in 1994. The tank weighs 37 tons, and the main gun is a long-barreled 83A Type 105mm rifled tank gun. Of course. Except for the chassis, this tank now has basically nothing to do with 59D. The main gun has been enhanced to 125 by us, and it is also equipped with a large number of automatic sensing equipment. At the same time, explosive reactive armor is installed on the front of the body and turret, and the headlights are moved to the upper part of the right fender. The overall performance is already a very standard third-generation tank. Please note that this is the data before we arrived at the Great Mo Realm. Hu Jun deliberately prolonged the sound, then paused, and looked at Xiao Yi deeply. After arriving at the Great Mo Realm, this 59 underwent another round of modifications. In addition to adding some driving talismans inside, we also equipped it with a new breakthrough psychic armor. This composite armor was developed based on the psychic shield. It is only 300mm thick, but its defensive effect is comparable to the 700mm front armor of the M1A1. Once the thickness is reduced, the tank's mobility will be much higher. At the same time, this armor can also block some vibrations and chemical gases. It is our most advanced type of armor at present, and it belongs to a special material that is not at the mass production level. I can even say that With the same thickness, this armor is the best in the country. Huo Jun was like a father whose cabbage was driven away by his own family. His tone was full of strong reluctance and disgust for his unskilled son-in-law. What he said was actually not exaggerated. This kind of armor cannot be mass-produced at present. The purpose of his application to his superiors for this 59 modification was to verify some results in practice. As a result, he didn't pay attention and it was stolen by someone. Then he sighed and said to Xiao Yi, Xiao Xiao, try to control this 59 to go up to the sky. Note, 3 updates today. Chapter 349 True 59 Railgun. Xiao Xiao, try to control this 59 to fly, on the ground. Even though Huo Jun had a different kind of scrutiny towards Xiao Yi, he was still a little excited when he said this. Although Xiao Yi's example is difficult to popularize, after all, in the case of a heavy spirit, Xiao Yi is probably the only one in the entire camp. After reaching the 7th level of key training, most soldiers can probably only refine one life definition magic weapon. It is hard to say how many people will be willing to choose tanks at that time. If you want to really achieve a large number of 59 modified to fly, such as setting up a flying 59 modified squadron, you probably have to wait until the floating formation in Ziqiang City is obtained and the principle is cracked before it can be achieved. But even if Xiao Yi is an isolated case, the scene of the 59 modified to fly is still exciting and hard to suppress. That's the 59 modified to fly. How many people dream of this scene? Hearing Huo Jun's words, Xiao Yi couldn't help but look at Lin Li and asked for his opinion. Lin Li nodded gently. Comrade Xiao, if you feel good, please demonstrate it. After getting Lin Li's consent, Xiao Yi immediately began to prepare. It has been mentioned before. Most ordinary key training 7th level practitioners need to use the flying sword to practice flying after refining their own life instruments. The purpose is to avoid some mistakes when flying, such as hitting the wall. However, Xiao Yi's special qualifications as a double spiritual root plus a heavy spiritualist are not included. The heavy spiritualist's explosive divine consciousness makes him innately have enough power. Long-distance flying in the air will definitely require more practice, but it is still very easy to just ascend and descend vertically. As for the balance in the air, it is even simpler. Before Chen Rong, a single spiritual root, appeared, Xiao Yi was the most qualified person in the camp. While enjoying the preferential treatment of resources, various skill training is naturally not available. After all, giving you preferential treatment is not to let you enjoy it, but to let you grow into a towering tree as soon as possible. Therefore, very early on, Xiao Yi then had a sense of balance equivalent to that of an excellent astronaut, and it was so easy to operate. Then Xiao Yi walked to the side of 59, slowly activated his divine thoughts, and officially began to demonstrate. Gradually 59 began to respond. First, an antenna behind the armor began to tremble slightly, then the tracks, and then the entire body began to slowly float in the air. 1 meter. 5 meters. 10 meters. 20 meters. Lin Li withdrew his eyes from the 59 that was constantly rising into the air, and said to Xiao Yi with some concern, Comrade Xiao Yi, pay attention to the consumption of divine thoughts. If you are too tired, you can stop for a while. Don't overload. Everything should be done in a safe way. Xiao Yi smiled at him with full confidence. Don't worry, I know what I am doing. I haven't taken to the sky yet. The divine thoughts consumed by the magic weapon alone in the air are not very large. I can hold on. Hearing this, Lin Li couldn't help but cast a look at Liu Xiangqian. Liu Xiangqian understood what he meant, pointed to the main control of the divine sense instrument that was taken out of the room, and nodded calmly. It was mentioned before. The brightness of the divine sense instrument can simply estimate the level of a person's divine consciousness, which is more convincing than the words of Xiao Yi, the person involved. With Liu Xiangqian's feedback, Lin Li was relieved and continued to watch the launch of the Type 59 modified quietly. Then he thought of something and his face looked a little strange. If Xiao Yi's divine consciousness is strong enough, wouldn't the Type 59 modified railgun be true? The floating height of the Type 59 modified became higher and higher, 50 meters and 100 meters. Finally, it was suspended at a position about 200 meters above the ground, motionless. If an ordinary drone remained silent at this height, most people would hardly notice its existence. But this time, a main battle tank weighing more than 30 tons was launched, which was many times larger than the drone. In addition, The special appearance of the main battle tank instantly attracted the attention of a large number of researchers. What the hell? What is that? A UFO. Stupid, don't you see the turret? That's a tank. Oh, so that's it. Who are you? I'm Li Hao. Can't you recognize me? I'm 800 degrees myopic and ran out without glasses. I can't tell a person from an animal 3 meters away. It's a medical miracle that I can see a shadow. Understand? Crazy. Some young researchers subconsciously took out their mobile phones and shot short videos at the sky. Their supervisors didn't care much and let them shoot. Anyway, there is no signal in the Great Mo realm to post to moments, and there is no restriction on speaking in the internal LAN. In addition, every time you go back to your home country to contact your family, you have to go through strict review. This kind of video is destined not to spread to your home country in the short term. As for when the video is allowed to be truly public, the rabbits may have more than just this Fission 59 modified. But it's also a good thing that these videos can't be sent out. Otherwise, the military theory servers would probably be paralyzed within half an hour. Then Lin Li looked at Xiao Yi. Comrade Xiao, how do you feel? Xiao Yi closed his eyes and felt it for a while, then said, it's a very special feeling. I can see some scenes on the ground through the perspective of the 59 modified, and it seems that I can also fire some ammunition. Huajun suddenly interrupted, then what about the radar? What about the fire control system? Can the vertical stabilizer be adjusted? Xiao Yi tried it and shook his head. The radar and fire control system don't seem to work, but the vertical stabilizer and the angle of the gun can be adjusted. Huajun heard it thoughtfully. It shouldn't be. Our main battle tanks can be regarded as an independent module in special circumstances. If the fire control system cannot be used, the shooting accuracy will be affected. Unless you or arrange for others to enter the tank and control it manually tonight. As soon as Huajun said this, the expressions of everyone at the scene were a little strange. It turned out that the ground tour infantry tank really cooperated. Then Xiao Yi lowered the 59 modified to the ground with the assistance of Wei Fan, and was led by Zhang Guanghe to rest aside. After all, it was really stressful after all the trouble, not to mention that Xiao Yi almost died earlier. Lin Li, Huajun, Liu Xiangqian, Wang Qiang and others discussed the previous incident while walking. Lin Li turned his head and looked back at 59 change while walking, frowning and said, heavy spirit, heavy spirit. What does this physique refer to? Why can two life instruments be refined? Liu Xiangqian thought about it and said, heavy spirit, could it refer to dual souls? Note, in fact, 59 change is a plot that was thought of very long ago, but readers who know about it don't know how many are left. At that time, it was planned to let Julian sacrifice, and then his soul would possess 59, but before it possessed 59, he was criticized badly, and changed it back 3 hours later. Readers who still remember this incident, please leave a 1. I want to see if there are still old people after so long. It seems that I didn't even get a score at that time. Today is 918. Don't forget the national humiliation. Chapter 350. Does the soul exist? Does the term heavy soul refer to dual souls? After saying this, Liu Xiangqian paused and added, of course, I don't mean that Comrade Xiao Yi has 2 personalities, but that he may be somewhat special in terms of spiritual attributes. Lin Li raised his eyelids and glanced at him, and asked with a little curiosity, Mr. Liu, do you believe that there are souls in the world? Liu Xiangqian was stunned at first, and then hesitantly said, I originally held a negative attitude. After all, you know the experience of my husband in the early years. But after contacting the Great Mo realm, I think that in some areas that we have not touched upon, there may indeed be some unknown situations, such as souls. As one of the earliest top scientific researchers in China, Liu Xiangqian has personally experienced many special historical nodes. Not to mention some of the years that cannot be mentioned, he was a witness to the later Kigan wave supernatural powers. I wonder if there are still classmates who remember that his wife's experimental project on evil spirits was cancelled because the Kigan scam was exposed. Therefore, Liu Xiangqian has always held a negative attitude towards the existence of souls, and feels that it is a bit mysterious. But after coming to the Great Mo realm, his ideas gradually began to become somewhat subtle. As a well-known medical scientist, Liu Xiangqian was responsible for the theoretical research of elixirs and some cultivation concepts in the camp. He led the team to break through the mass production barrier of Qilingdan, and was the biggest contributor to the Harbin Pharmaceutical 6 brand Qilingdan. He was also responsible for the research task of the pineal gland. Therefore, Liu Xianqian inevitably came into contact with a lot of cultivation information in the Great Mo realm, especially the large field of life. For example, there are many practitioners with high cultivation in the Great Mo realm who have survived for hundreds of years, and even before the big collision, there were examples of immortality for thousands of years. Therefore, many of Liu Xianqian's concepts inevitably changed, including the exploration of the soul. Soul. This has always been a very controversial field, involving materialism or idealism. Materialists believe that the soul does not exist, while idealists are completely the opposite, believing that people must have souls. The local soul is more of a philosophical issue than a scientific issue. Perhaps many people have heard of such an experiment. Scientists tested some dying people and found that their weight would be 21 grams lighter in the last second before death, while the gas they exhaled was far less than this value. Then they called 21 grams the weight of the soul. But in fact, this is an exaggerated half-lie. Yes, half-lie, it is not a rumor, but it is not so mysterious. The first person to discover this situation was Duncan McDougall, a doctor at the Eagles. In 1907, he published an article titled "On the Hypothesis that the Soul is Material and Proving the Existence of Soul Material with Experiments." The article describes how he measured the weight of a person's soul and the process, and finally concluded that the soul weight of the sample patient was 21 grams. This is the origin of the soul of 21 grams, and it gradually spread. But what's interesting is that this number is actually not used by many religions. Many personal scriptures even refute this concept. But it is hung on the lips of many literary youths to show off. This may be something McDougall would never have thought of until his death. Later, there was a saying that the missing 21 grams were just the ADP of the human body's cells, which is the so-called energy. This is actually just a false lie. No one has ever conducted an experiment to refute this theory. There is indeed such a data of 21 grams, but this is the only experimental copy at present. After the publication of that article, many countries or project teams have actually conducted similar experiments. But the numbers obtained fluctuated greatly, generally only between 0.2 to 0.8 grams. This weight is very small for the human body, and it is difficult to define and prove that it is the weight of the soul. Therefore, the saying of the weight of the soul has always been a half-lie, half true and half false, and cannot be fully believed. Another experiment related to the soul came from Sam Pannier, and this experiment was actually exaggerated a lot. The design of this experiment is actually very simple. If the soul of the patient can float up after death, he can also see his own body, see the doctors rescuing his body, and see the lights on the ceiling. Then if we put a board under the ceiling and put some small objects on the board, only Sam himself knows what the objects are, and others don't know. Then the soul should be able to see these small objects. If this patient can be rescued and can tell what this small object on the board is, it will be possible to distinguish whether the soul is an illusory imagination or an objective entity. Many marketing accounts tell the following story. Sam studied more than 100 patients and found that 7 of the rescued patients could tell what they saw when their soul left their bodies after waking up, especially the small object on the board, and they were all right. This is actually a fabrication and nonsense. This experiment itself does not prove whether there is a soul. In the first phase of the experiment, only one person described the visual and auditory perception of the surrounding area within 3 minutes of cardiac arrest. The second phase of the experiment is still ongoing. The latest news on a certain Twitter account is in 2019, but it encountered a well-known special situation, and it has not been promoted so far, and no results have been announced. The above content has been personally verified by the author. The person who is truly relatively authoritative in the debate on the soul in the history of science should be John Ecke. This Nobel Prize winner directly mentioned the soul in his paper and proposed the statement that there is an invisible communication substance between nerve cells, which is the composition of the soul. Nobel Prize papers are relatively open, not in terms of credibility, but in terms of the attitude of the paper author towards the problem. Icke said this in the paper, which is basically the same as coming out publicly. Many people may think that scientists are materialists, but in fact, in addition to many believers, there are also a large number of scientists who hold a reserved attitude towards the soul. There are also many research projects on the soul every year, and there are large groups of scientific researchers both at home and abroad. Of course, there are also many people who are just doing nothing. In short, Liu Xianqian's reply was not unexpected to Lin Li. In fact, it is not only Liu Xianqian, But Lin himself also feels that the heavy soul may be related to the soul. It's just a pity that there are too few samples now, and many studies cannot be carried out normally. After that, everyone had a simple communication and left. Note, this chapter is not a statement. After contacting the Great Mo realm, the issue of the soul will inevitably be discussed. But it's not good to go too deep. It's easy to quarrel, so I simply use one chapter to pass it over and dispel some rumors. I'm afraid that everyone will say that the word count is too high, so I only mention it in 2,000 words. Today is 918, and I still say, we must strive to be strong and never forget the national humiliation. In order to prevent people from saying that I am writing too much, today's chapter will not be counted. I will continue to write 3 chapters tomorrow. Please give me your monthly votes. Does anyone know the relationship between broadband and sockets? I have a 200-meter broadband, and I changed to an older socket 2 days ago. When I download movies, cough cough, the download speed is almost halved. What's going on? End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.